You can see, you can adjust the camera in some way. It's blurry.
It's blurry.
Might be me. I don't know.
You're
You're clear.
clear for us. We look clear in the bottom.
You all just look airbrushed right now.
That's probably better.
Be thankful.
Definitely don't want portrait blur. Definitely on none. So.
Here, I'm gonna jump off and come right back just to make sure. Oh, never mind. I can see. We're good.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead and let everybody else in. Okay. Yeah. we're-
All right, well, call to order the March HALRB meeting, and
Umari Davis,
here.
Dan Dreyer. Here. Robert Decker is excused. Andrew Fackler,
Here.
Alex Foster. Here. Carmela Ham,
Here.
Ray Hanley,
Here.
Gerald Laporte,
Here.
Joan Lawrence is excused. Katie Myers, Mark Turnbull,
Here.
Andrew Wenchel,
Here.
and Dick Woodruff.
Here.
Have a quorum.
That will move to the explanation of tonight's meeting. Again, welcome, and move effective September 1st, 2020. New state regulation now requires certain county board appointed commissions, including HLRB, to have in-person quorum to get it. HLRB hearings are provided in hybrid environments, both in person and online. The public may attend and participate either virtually or in person. Members of the board and members of the meetings this evening. Today's meeting is available to stream via the county website via Teams link. There's also a dial-in phone option for those who wish to use it. The board members, presenters, speakers, today's meeting. If your device muted and your video turned off, then you're following the speak. Public speakers not sponsoring items on the agenda. Pre-registration to speak online at today's meeting is required. Speakers are available at the front of the room for those in-person speakers. I'll call on you to speak after the presentation of the agenda item. Meeting chat is active for persons to be technical assistance only. It should not be used for discussion, public comment, questions about the agenda, or requests for more information. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public testimony period. All voting will be done by a call to roll. Lastly, today's meeting will be recorded and posted on the county website. All information such as today's meeting, whether it's written or spoken, and with that, we'll move into approval, quick review and approval of the February minutes. Any questions about the February minutes? Questions or comments or concerns? Hearing none, sir,
Move to approve. Second.
Okay.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Ayer,
Yes.
Mr. Fackler,
Yes.
Ms. Foster, Ms. Ham,
Yes.
Mr. Hanley,
Yes.
Mr. Laporte,
Yes.
Mr. Turnbull,
Abstain.
Mr. Wenchel,
Yes.
and Mr. Woodruff.
Yes.
Next, move on to the consent agenda. There's one item on consent. Is there any questions or concern about the consent agenda? So hearing none, is there a move to approve?
Move we approve is it just one item?
Or just one item, yeah.
One item on the consent agenda.
Second that.
Who's the second, Mark?
Please call the roll.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Dreyer,
Yes.
Mr. Fackler,
Yes.
Ms. Foster, Ms. Ham,
Yes.
Mr. Hanley,
Yes.
Mr. Laporte,
Yes.
Mr. Turnbull,
Yes.
Mr. Wenchel,
Yes.
and Mr. Woodruff.
Yes.
That is unanimous.
Our first question agenda item.
Okay. So the Robert Falls Senior Family Burial Ground is located at 4241 Fairfax Drive in the Ballston neighborhood and commercial area. I'll actually just go back so you can see it. The burial ground is situated east of the new development called Unity Homes at the former location of the Central United Methodist Church, or CUMC. The burial ground contains gravestones of members of the Ball family. In 2016, the Ballston Station Housing Corporation proposed the redevelopment of the 1923 church on site for the construction of an 8-story residential building that would incorporate a new church, an on-site childcare and preschool, a mixed-income housing component, and below-grade parking for residential and church uses. The county board approved both the site plan and the SHD in February 2017. Construction of the new building is now complete. And I'll skip back to these, but in August 2021, the HALRB approved COA 2115 to reduce the size of the burial ground, install a cast-in-place concrete wall with a stone veneer topped by a cast iron ornamental fence, and to install an interpretive marker about the burial ground. The current proposal is an amendment to the COA. So these are what was previously viewed and approved by you all. Go back to that one. Okay. The applicant is currently proposing to decrease a portion of the existing cast iron ornamental fence on top of the boundary wall located on the north side of the LHD to install the new historic marker. The historic marker would be installed at a 45-degree angle to allow for readability. The size of the area in which the fence would be reduced would measure 3 feet wide by 1 foot and 6 inches tall. A horizontal cast iron rail would be installed under the marker for added stability. The DRC considered this application at its March 6th meeting. There were no comments or questions, and the DRC placed this item on the consent agenda. As you all may have seen in the email, we received a public comment and a public speaker is going to talk about this item. So it was pulled from consent and moved to the discussion agenda. HPP staff recommend approval of this application as submitted. The proposed work would be a minor change from what was previously approved and installed by the applicant. The fence would simply have a segment removed and the remaining fence would stay in place, which conforms with the burial grounds design guidelines. The proposed work would not adversely affect the character defining features of the burial ground, and it would improve the pedestrian experience with the LHD, since it would make the marker more accessible. So just to reiterate, the location of the marker, it's a little hard to see without zooming in, but it would be over here on this side. That was what was previously approved. That is the end of the staff report.
I've been here to present.
Yeah, I believe Scott is here.
Please speak.
Scott, are you here? Lauren, do you know if Scott has joined?
No, Scott hasn't joined.
And Ryan's not here either?
No, I don't see them. And I'm sorry to interrupt your train of thought, but I just want to make sure, what are you moving slides on the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, I am not seeing movement with the slides.
What do you see?
I still just see the HLRB first screen.
Okay. I'm gonna try again.
What do you see now?
Now I see discussion items. Thank you.
I'm gonna keep it this way then, because that seems to be, maybe that was the problem. You can see when I advance them, all right, Lauren?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you.
So typically we are even. So do you maybe want to do the DRC report? The applicant
Yeah,
comes
yeah,
in.
sure. DRC report is, we're using in DRC, and our thought was that there's no, essentially it's more visible this way, and there's no real sort of change from the original approval that we made earlier. So there's no real, with no looks at the, we thought there might be some comments. There have been comments previously regarding, I guess, the location of the fence versus location of the gravestone, different things. But we thought all in all, it's actually a better solution for the nature of make the actual, plat more readable. Also, maintain the integrity of the burial grounds. We took another step to be out of improvement on the original. Is because one comment that they mentioned, I guess, is it's not set essentially in the fence as it is now. Maybe set proud of the fence eventually, actually disrupting more of the sort of flow, and actually would make people make actually the burial area less visible when you were reading the actual plaque itself. And then it can be placed in the burial area. Either that would also be a conflict in the design integrity of the. We thought this was a happy medium, and it makes this.
Yeah, Lauren, they're still not here, right?
Nope.
I guess. Which I guess I have to read that whole thing out loud for the record, or. Well, there was a public comment that was submitted in an email, so you all will have that to reference back to, and then we'll put that in the minutes for this meeting. But I guess we can move on to the public speaking portion of the meeting. And I saw that Mr. Byrne joined, so he'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, hello. This is the first time that we've ever seen the location of where the sign would go. So basically, it's not too clear on what's been presented to you, but it is on the full set of slides. The applicant is planning to install the new historical marker within the fence on the north side of the historical site. However, this is the wrong side of the historical site. Few people will see the marker unless they are walking south on North Stafford Street. The HALRB should therefore ensure that the applicant place the marker within the fence on the south side of the historic site. That's the opposite side. It's right where that fellow is standing is where they would put it in, but it should be on the other side, facing Fairfax Drive. The marker would then face the sidewalk on the north side of Fairfax Drive, which has much more traffic than Stafford Street has. Many people walking on Fairfax Drive will then see the marker. Some may stop to read the marker. In addition, and we haven't discussed this, it should have been this meeting probably, the applicant needs to present its plans for the reinstallation of the Countess Boston historic marker, which is presently in storage. The applicant should install that marker in a location that is near the new historic marker, again on the south side of the historic site, perhaps inside the historic site so it won't get vandalized, but anyway, it should be somewhere near Fairfax Drive. That's where it was previously. People walking on Fairfax Drive will then see both markers and may read both. And by putting on the other side, you're going to have a lot more people seeing it, both of those markers. So that's about it. It's a small change and everything, but we never have before seen the actual position where they would look, where they would put the marker. I was visiting the site today, and the gate was installed, but it wasn't closed. So I was actually going to walk. I walked in and saw the markers, and I read I know the signs presented. It's consistent, but that will be probably the last time I'll be able to walk in, or anyone will be able to walk in and see the markers themselves, because they're really quite far from the fence. I really couldn't see any of the inscriptions when I was outside the fence. But anyway, that's the only thing I have done. Just move them, put the sign and the new and the old marker on the side that faces Fairfax Drive, on the opposite side where that man is standing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Byrne.
Questions?
Not that I see, so.
Good. All right, before the board, any questions or comments?
Well, if you want me to comment we've been through this many, many times. And discussion of where the plaque goes. Fairfax Drive is a through street will that has traffic and is favored by much more traffic, and the chance of somebody in a car seeing this is remote. If you face it, Fairfax was always, I think, further to the north than very suggested. I think that the fact that we've been through this many times and BRC felt that this was consistent with what we've talked about before. We haven't changed the location. What we've done is changed the fence. That's in part Arlington County request, really, to modify the fence. So I just recommend we just proceed with project this. I think that the DRC, that was our recommendation.
I just have a quick question.
I wanted to make a point that that is elevated above the ground. A car is not going to hit that sign because the whole thing is elevated on that stone wall beneath it. So it's above the area that it says a car is not going to hit that. It'll hit this sign for the sign, that wall first. But basically, if you want people to see it, that's where you put it on the face of Fairfax Drive.
I'm sorry, but the matter is before the board right now. Mark, please.
I mean, I agree with Andrew. We should just approve this. In the 14 years I've been on the board, it's one of my proudest projects since I'm a Boston resident. But I do have a question regarding something Bernie brought up. What does the applicant have to do, if I recall correctly, kind of white Commonwealth historic park? I don't, that's not really their responsibility if it comes back or not, right?
You're talking about the like aluminum
The
Boston.
aluminum Boston one. I'm not sure what they have to do.
So Lauren, do you want to speak to that? I certainly can, but I know that you were also
Sure.
prepared to answer that one.
So I believe that question was concerning what does it have to do with the silver sign, that the Boston historic sign? So technically with the agenda item and what the HLRB is discussing, that is not part of the discussion for tonight, but I'm happy to at least state that when you all heard this in August 2021, the motion was directed to say that basically county staff would help the applicant determine exactly where the best location would be for that existing signage. And that was because it was outside of the local historic district. Therefore, the HLRB didn't really have any say of exactly of where it could go anymore after it had been removed. And it also just was kind of seen as this could be done administratively. And so we are working still with the applicant to figure out exactly where the sign would be. But basically our discussions so far have been, it's going to be pretty much close to where it was before. It's just no longer going to be in a grassy area. It's going to now be in the sidewalk area closest to Fairfax Drive. And so that should be done fairly soon.
Thanks, Lauren.
Welcome.
Any other comments or questions, concerns?
I'd just like to make one comment that I know that over the years, we have talked many times about the location of historic markers, even when they're not in historic districts. So, no, I appreciate, I'm not sure where we get the jurisdiction, but we've certainly talked about it in the past. And so I don't think it's completely out of the purview of the HALRB to make recommendations to Arlington County as to where this should be placed. I don't mean, the staff can say, well, we'll decide. We don't need to hear from you, but I know that we frequently have these discussions and request. I don't know exactly that we've talked about it many times, and so it's not I think that, you know, the question is a legitimate question, and I think it should be open to discussion by the HLRB.
Can I just clarify, there are two markers we're talking about here?
Yes.
Only one is really on the agenda,
Yeah.
and that's the one that will be installed as part of the fence,
Yes.
right?
This-
One way or another,
Yes, this
on one of the three sides or not.
This-
Right.
that you all
So,
reviewed.
and that has been reviewed in August,
Yes.
and it was reviewed for placement. I saw it on the graph you showed. Was it there then?
Yes.
So this has been reviewed by the board. Okay, and the other marker is not ours.
It's a county.
It's a county marker outside the jurisdiction of the historic area.
Correct.
I agree, we can make comments about it, but it really probably isn't ours.
No, I mean, in fact, we did discuss the location of the.
Of the silver
other
marker, okay.
In connection with this, and I'm not sure we ever passed a resolution, but both in this case and in many other cases,
Yeah, no, that's fair.
the HLRB has talked about it, so,
I just was
I
trying to
think-
clarify for myself, it's new to me. But I
I'm
did-
happy to clarify. It was in the motion for staff to work with the applicant to find the location. And that was based on the direction that the HLRB gave staff.
Well, I just want to add a footnote. I visited this site too. It's beautiful. The windows are lovely. They put a whole array of windows on the Fairfax side. And they put the big one that we had talked about before, more strategically located. And I think they've done a lovely, I mean, I hope the church is happy with it. That's the main thing. But from a historic point of view, I think they have moved enough material there that it makes for a very interesting historic site now. It is too bad you can't get in and read the markers, but I think that you would sacrifice people stealing them or them wearing down or all kinds of other problems. So it seems that to me that the board, I wasn't on the board then, but the board made all the right decisions for this placement and for the way that it's been set up. And the windows are lovely. I don't know, Mark, if that's what you did, but somebody had those windows put in there and they really work well there.
Let's show your point of view.
Grass.
Mr. Nash?
Yep, I'm here. I can hear you now. Sorry,
Okay,
I was having some connectivity issues.
That's okay. Welcome. You're welcome to add anything if you'd like.
No, nothing I think in particular to add. I think, we, followed the plan of the county. I think the markers and, the place that was intended, and many thanks to the compliments on the windows. I do think they look really nice, and the church actually is very happy about it. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll make a motion.
I just want to say that you have never before discussed where this new sign is going to be. And this is the first time, despite what people.
Yeah, Mr. Byrne, as far as I can tell, based on the application, the location of the sign was on HLRB approved in August of 2023. 21. So it's so the location has been discussed before. It's been approved. We do want to take your point, and it is a good suggestion, but in this matter, at this point, we'll make a motion. So I move that HLRB approve COA 21-15A at 4201 Fairfax Drive, Robert Ball Senior Family Burial Ground, as submitted to allow for the angled installation of new tabletop historic markers.
I second that.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Dreyer?
Yes.
Mr. Fakler?
yes.
Ms. Foster?
Yes.
Ms. Ham?
yes,
Mr. Hanley?
Yes.
Mr. Laporte?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Turnbull?
Yes.
Mr. Winchell?
Yes.
And Mr. Woodruff?
Yes.
Thank you. Next discussion item.
All right, so the next one is at the Arlington Post Office, Local Historic District. We don't get very many projects from here, so I'm gonna give a little backstory on this one. So in 2003, the U.S. Postal Service, along with Keating Development Company, applied for a site plan project to upgrade and expand the Arlington Post Office, which became a local historic district in 1984, and construct an office addition over top and at the rear of the post office, as well as the Dan Kane building, which became an LHD in 1988. So you can see here on the map, this is where the Dan Kane building is, and this is where the post office is, and this was the site plan of that project. As part of the site plan project, the Dan Kane building and the Arlington Post Office were connected via an infill commercial space at 3110 Washington Boulevard. This infill commercial space is the location of the subject application. So that space, I know this is a little, but this is where the location of the project is today. Although this commercial space is closer to the Dan Kane building, it is technically within the boundary of the Arlington Post Office LHD. Between May 2003 and November 2004, the HALRB reviewed and approved COA 03-02, which outlined the details of the site plan development. The commercial space was built in 2007. In April 2008, the occupants of the commercial space at 311 Washington Boulevard were found not in compliance with the Arlington County zoning ordinance because they had installed a sign for the business Clarendon Ballet without a COA. The new commercial space between the Arlington Post Office and the Dan Kane building had not been properly tagged in the county's permitting system as an LHD, and as such, the permit for the sign had been issued without review by either the HPP staff or the HALRB. Additionally, the developers of the commercial space did not inform the buyer, nor were they required to by state law, that the building was situated in a local historic district. Given these circumstances, the HALRB retroactively approved the sign as installed in July 2009. So there has been a previous sign at this location. And actually, I'll go back up so you can see the front of the building. In August 2008, the HALRB approved COA 07-11A for the installation of the awnings, which you see here, light fixtures, and new door folds and hardware at this location. In November 2008, amendments were made to the front entrance via COA 07-11B. Between 2021 and part of 2023, there was a new occupant of the building, Effective Wellness. This business installed a sign without a COA or a signage permit from the county per the records available to HPP staff. The installation of the sign was also not noted during the HPP inspections. With the recent change of occupancy, the sign has been removed. So what you see here is what is there right now. However, the HPP staff feel it is important to note so the HALRB has the full context.
Where was it? Where was it?
It was right here. And it was like I don't know if it was a lit sign, but it just said effective.
It was red.
Okay. The current proposal is for the installation of a new sign on the facade of the business, Clarendon, which is located here. The sign would have channel lettering and would not be illuminated. It would be centered above the entryway. It would measure 75 inches wide by 30 inches tall. Individual lettering would measure between 5 inches and 12 inches in height. The all-white sign would be installed with a 1/4-inch anchor masonry screws, and there would roughly be 2 to 3 anchors per letter into the facade. Neither pre-existing holes nor masonry joints would be used due to needing to position the sign correctly according to the applicant. The DRC considered this application at its March 6th meeting. They felt that the sign was not intrusive or flashy, but asked for more information about how it would be installed. They also expressed that a metal finish would be stylistically more appropriate for the casing of the sign, since it would complement the sign for Lion Hall, the neighboring restaurant in the Dan Kane LHD. The DRC felt that if this change was made, the item could be placed on the consent agenda. Following the DRC meeting, HPP staff spoke with the applicant who had been unable to attend the meeting. The applicant clarified that the entire sign would be white and that the casing around the sign was not black as presented in their initial submission. The applicant stated a desire to bring the project forward without changing the casing to silver, and it was for this reason that the item was left on the was put on the discussion agenda. HPP staff recommends approval of the subject application. The size and lettering of the proposed signage would not overwhelm the facade of the building, nor would it detract from the historic nature of the LHD. Additionally, the individual lettering would not exceed 12 inches in height as recommended by the guidelines for signage in the Arlington Post Office and Dan King Building Historic Districts. The wording of the sign will be limited to the business name, which is also appropriate per the guidelines. Since the sign would not be electric, no additional or new openings would be made for electric connections. However, new openings would be made to anchor the sign per the current proposal. The HPP staff understands that the proper positioning of the sign necessitates new anchor points. Given that the facade is not historic, HPP staff is less concerned about the creation of new minor penetrations on the facade, but still encourages the applicant to use mortar joints or pre-existing openings from previous signage when possible. Finally, the proposed project is an alteration which could easily be removed without any adverse effect to the property, which conforms with standard number 10 of the Secretary of the Interior standards for recommunication. That is the end of the staff report. Let me see. I don't think so. His name is James, and I don't see him. So
Okay.
yeah, and he said he might come in person and bring things, but I honestly haven't heard in a couple of days, even though I've been trying. So I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Does the HALRB have any jurisdiction over? No. So it, whether or not it's over here, white or.
I mean, with signage, it's always a little bit tricky, right? Because it's not that, I think that the HALRB has purview to offer guidance on that. So I don't think it was inappropriate for the DRC to say, we feel that it would fit in more with the local historic district if this were the options chosen. But there's nothing that says like, I don't know how to word it exactly, but there's nothing that the HALRB could necessarily say, we won't pass this if you don't do that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that.
DRC report.
Here's your report, so with that, piggyback when Alex just asked,
But
yeah.
what material is used on those blocks? Is that just block? What's the material on the facing?
I think it's just concrete.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cast on something, yeah.
Yeah.
But the DRC, again, sort of,
Might be limestone.
they're sort of repeat again what, so your report is that we took no real exception to the sign. We thought that it fit in, rather well with the LHD. But we thought it would be a little bit more, it would fit a little bit better actually. We're encased in a silver or chrome casing. We thought that it might sort of coordinate a little bit with the Dan Kane sign around the corner. It might be a little bit better fit essentially. But other than that, we took no real exception to it. I mean, it's obviously the sizing of the fonts, lettering, the spacing on the building, and all seemed in accord with the spirit of the LHD. This we thought this would be better in silver, chrome, or something. But of artists.
So is that what it would look like essentially?
Yes.
Okay. And can you explain how you can have an historic building without an historic facade? Or how that occurred, how that happened?
Sorry.
I think this is an infill building.
It's an
correct?
infill in
It's an
between
infill.
the two districts.
But it's part of the district?
Part of
It
the
is part of
district.
the district.
Address is all part of the district.
So it's
Was on the board when we approved this. I remember the discussion fairly well. Okay, as to why this was included in the historic district, because it was, between two other, and so they wanted to make sure that whatever was put there reflected the historic character of the buildings on each side. So
Yeah.
that's why we included the
That's all.
infill building in the historic district.
Why isn't it historic? How much newer is it? It's like brand new? I mean, how old is
It
it?
was built in 2007.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
As part of
That
the,
is the part of
Oh,
it.
it is.
So you have.
Or was it in the
proposed
eighties?
boxes.
No. So this building here and this one here, they both became local historic districts in the 80s. So
Ah.
this is what the site plan, like proposed redevelopment project looked like and what it looks like today, because this is what was built. But this building used to be separate. All of this didn't exist. And this was here.
Yeah.
So this is historic, this is historic. But this space right here is all infill, built in 2007. So the space itself is not historic, but because it falls into the boundary of the post office local historic district, it is technically in our purview to review changes there.
Your memory is better than mine, Jerry. I'm glad.
I have a question. I didn't quite understand what the proposal is. Is this white with a black border around it, or?
No, so it is a white base with like white casings. The entire sign is white.
Okay, so there's no black.
There's no black.
Okay.
Initially, it was presented as such, and it kind of looks like that here, but I think it's probably, the applicant probably did that more to help the lettering actually like stand out on a screen, rather than leaving it all white, because I think it looks a little flushed together if it didn't have that on the screen.
I agree with the, I don't know.
I just wanted to interrupt, Jerry. I think we felt the ERC that that's the reason we recommended the silver lettering, because it's not going to stand out if it's white. So it's just not just the fact that it's part of the historic district and it matches sign of one corner restaurant, but it's in keeping with the historic district, and I don't think the white lettering is to the advantage of the applicant at all, because I don't think the sign's going to be as visible in just white. I think that's the reason we recommend silver to go with the historic area, and also to make the sign read against the concrete. White's going to wash out visually.
We're trying
What?
to match it to Lion Hall, right? Then for
Pancake.
anything
Well-
that's nearby, then we would recommend that it would be illuminated.
Yeah, so I did a little digging on that, because the Lion Hall is the restaurant that's in the Dan Kane building. So it's just so everyone knows what we're talking about. But the sign for Lion Hall is not historic. That was built in, or it was installed in either 2009 or 2010. So,
So that was approved.
and it was approved by the HALRB, and it's a neon sign. So
Right.
it's, when I was out there most recently, I looked at it. It's like black, like acrylic underneath, and the neon lettering on top of that.
Because of that, I wonder if that was approved and we're again request they match something that's existing on the other side, but they're not illuminating it. They're within proportions and character of the building, and they're not causing more damage to a non-historic facade. It seems like a fair concession on their part to not drill more holes. It seems reasonable.
Yeah, I don't think
But
we can
could I just
criticize it.
finish what I was gonna say before? What I was gonna say was that I think it should be in silver because it's more characteristic. The Van Kane building is an art moderne building, so it seems to me silver is more of an appropriate, if you want to, I think it's to think of it as a material, like an aluminite. I think that's more characteristic of the art moderne structure next door, and that's why it would, as the HLRB, we should recommend that it be in silver. And I kind of agree that it would be nice if it were backlit also. I think that would be better for the business, but that's their decision and be more expensive. But you know, if they don't want to backlight it, that's fine, but I think that would also be more characteristic of the Art Moderne style, because that was very typically done in art, like as we see on the Dan Kane building, Lion Hall, that's the type of thing. Because this, to me, especially in white, I don't think it's very Art Moderne. I think it's better more Art Moderne than silver, and that's what I would vote for if we voted on that.
To clarify, to your point, I see here acrylic face, but also white metal. Is this all painted metal? Is that what I heard? Or is there still an acrylic face? Not that.
I think it has an acrylic base, you know, that's my understanding of their application. And I'm gonna double check that the applicant still is not here. Yeah, I'm still not seeing them, so.
Nan, please.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, you know, we can have our views about what we think an attractive or effective sign is, but I don't think we can refuse to approve a sign because we think the applicant has a too subtle sign. And, you know, I think if it's within their jurisdiction and if Lion Hall got to choose their sign, then that's a precedent.
I agree. I don't know if anyone has checked out the old sign, but this is like a vast improvement. So I think, you know, font is kind of in style with what I would think would go, and if this is what they like, you know, I think it's.
I'll just reiterate, it is appropriate for the guidelines.
I agree, but I also don't have any problem as you know, including in the minutes that Jerry and I think a few of us others think they've missed an opportunity to put on a sign that would have been the same cost, but in a style that was modern, like the buildings on the two sides. I mean, the post office is a 30s building, and Dan Kane is probably a 30s building too. And it would have been nice, and I think it would have drawn the eye. But again, I don't think it's our call. I think it's up to them. It's just a missed opportunity. And it is a whole lot better than the last two signs that I remember on that building.
Well, the second one was never approved by DHL.
Oh, you won't take blame for that?
No, I mean, the first one was.
No, I know.
Approved
You're kidding.
retroactively,
Right.
Under pressure. And the second one was put up, but never approved by. So the blue one was better than the red one, but
They were all pretty bad.
yeah, this one I think is better than.
Yeah, I agree.
With that, I'll make a motion. I move that HLRB approve COA 24-08 at 3110 Washington Boulevard, in Arlington Post Office Historic District, for the request to install new commercial signage as submitted, because the sign is because the sign, the content, placement of because the size, the content, and placement of the sign are appropriate per the guidelines for signage for Arlington Post Office and Dan Kane Building Historic Districts.
Second.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Dreyer,
Yes.
Mr. Beckler,
Yes.
Ms. Foster, Ms. Ham,
yes,
Mr. Hanley,
Yes.
Mr. Laporte,
Yes.
Ms. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Turnbull,
Yes.
Mr. Winchell,
Yes,
and Mr. Woodruff.
Yes.
Rebecca just reading. So now she's here online as well.
On to the third discussion item. COA 2407.
Right. So the house at 3511 22nd Street North in the Maywood Historic District is a pre-1923 reading dwelling. In October 2004, the HALRB approved COA 0426 for the installation of a new main and secondary roofs on the house. The project included the installation of metal shingles on the main roof and the installation of standing seam metal on the secondary roofs. In December 2013, the HALRB approved COA 13-11 for the removal of the front porch and sunroom and the construction of a new front porch, which is what you see here, and a one-story side addition. This project was amended 3 times between 2013 and 2014 with small revisions. So the applicant is proposing, I'm gonna zoom in actually. Okay. The applicant is proposing to install a total of 23 solar panels on the main and secondary roofs of the house. The proposal includes the placement of 12 solar panels on the western gable of the main roof, so these here. 6 on the eastern gable of the main roof. 2 on the south facing gable on the cross gable section of the roof, so here. And 3 on the roof of the front porch, which is on the south elevation. You can see here, so this is the right of way, so it comes at an intersection in Maywood. The proposed placement allows for maximum solar production. The solar panels will have silver framing to match the roof color. Each solar panel would measure 44.65 inches wide by 67.8 inches tall, and the height between the roof surface and the base of the solar panel would be 6 inches. The solar meter will replace the current utility meter on the west elevation of the house, and an alternate current or AC disconnect, which would allow someone to turn off the entire system in an emergency, will be installed to the south of the solar meter. So I'm gonna scroll ahead here. All the specs for things. This is actually not common. So this is where the AC disconnect would go, and this is where the meter is currently, that's what they would replace. Okay. A conduit, which is used to protect and cover the wires associated with the solar panels, would run from the utility meter on the west elevation up to the attic, where the conduit would be installed if the attic is accessible. If the attic interior is not accessible, the applicant would install the conduit on the roof's exterior at a 90-degree angle and in a silver color to match the roof coloring. And so they submitted a couple images. So this is what the solar panel would look like. And here's some examples of conduits on the roof. So here's one, which I think it's this portion right here. Here's what it would look like on an elevation. So it's this wire that would run up. And then here's one where it's actually on the roof. So if they aren't able to install it in the attic, this is what it would essentially be like on the roof itself. Okay. The DRC considered this application at its March 6th meeting. The DRC members expressed concerns about the visibility of the proposed solar panels on the front porch roof from the public right-of-way. They noted a preference for the applicants to revise their design by moving this panel configuration to a different, less visible segment of the roof. Discussion did not center on the panels located on the main roof. Additionally, the DRC members wanted additional information about the rationale behind selected locations of the solar panels. The DRC placed this item on the discussion agenda. So HPP staff recommends partial approval of the subject application as submitted. Since the project proposes to place, actually, let me, before I move it, just go back to. Oh, sorry, there's a lot on this one. Okay. Okay. Since the project proposes to place solar panels on the main roof of the historic house on primary building elevations that are visible from the public right-of-way and to use multi-roof solutions, it required HALRB review according to Appendix G of the Maywood Design Guidelines rather than the administrative review process with the HPP staff. However, the proposed panels would comply with the following Appendix G specifications. The panels will have a low profile. They will be mounted less than or equal to 6 inches above the surface of the roof. They will be set at angles consistent with the slope of the supporting roof. They would blend with the surrounding features of the historic resource with respect to the color of the panels, and the panels will be arranged in an organized. The main objectives regarding solar panels noted in the Maywood Design Guidelines are 1, to protect the historic character of the building, and 2, to reduce the visual impacts of solar panels as seen from the public right-of-way. However, in the subject application from certain angles, all panels would be visible from the public right-of-way. The panels with the most visibility from the primary elevation are those that would be located on the front porch roof, so these ones here, and the south-facing side gable section of the cross gable roof, so these ones here. HPP staff recommends that the solar panels proposed in these specific areas either be relocated to less visible locations on the roof or removed from the project to comply with what is recommended in the Maywood Design Guidelines. Although the panels on the main front gable roof would be visible from certain angles of the main facade right of way due to the front gable roof design and positioning of the house along the street, the HPP staff agrees that the panel's low profile and silver framing will help limit their visibility. Furthermore, staff thinks it is important and possible to balance the needs of both historic preservation and environmental stewardship within the Maywood LHD. There are a few examples of properties in Maywood where solar panel technology is in use, and staff can elaborate on these further during the HALRB review of the project should it aid in the discussion. 2 final thoughts for the HALRB to consider. The first is that the roofing materials that would be impacted by the installation of the solar panels is not historic, considering it was replaced in 2004. Therefore, the impact on the historic fabric of the house would be minimal. The second is that the solar panels could be considered a temporary feature and that they could be removed in the future and still leave behind the essential form and integrity of the historic house. This would align with standard number 10 of the Secretary of Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. That's the end of my staff report, but I do have photographs. So I'll pull those up so you all can get a better sense of what the house looks like from the street. And I did see that the applicant was here. Yeah. Okay, oops, sorry. Okay. So maybe to orient everybody really quickly, the panels would be here and here. And then there would be some here and some here as well. And then this is the elevation that would have the meter, the AC disconnect, and the conduit running up to the attic. Now that's the end of this.
I have to invite the applicant to speak.
Oh, Mr. Hoban, we can't hear you.
I think you're muted.
Maybe.
Oh, it says mute there. You've got it muted, I think.
No, he's not muted. It's, yeah.
Could you maybe try exiting and coming back in? We'll see if that works. Breathe.
It's not my favorite. It was a Teams for a call yesterday. And
If you remind me the DRC.
Sure. The DRC report. As discussed.
Oh, wait, here it is.
Maybe.
Okay. Mr. Hoban, can you hear us now? And can you? Oh, we still can't
we
hear
see
you.
you, but we can't hear you.
Maybe try calling in instead.
Sure he's not muted here?
Yeah,
Looks like it.
because that would be, if I wanted to mute him, I would click that. Yeah. It would say unmute if.
Okay, we'll wait for you. You want to call in?
He's muted there.
Like click it and click it. Just.
Oh, see, but now. Wait, can you try to unmute yourself again? No.
Can you try unmuting again?
Gosh. No.
About the phone. What's going
Can he
on?
just call you and put it on speaker?
I could try that. I wonder if. Oh, I'll message him.
Give us 1 second. There's tech support that's in the building now, so we're seeing if we can get him to come back to the meeting room. If you want to hold on just a minute, Mr. Hogan.
He has offered his phone number. I don't know if we can call him.
I
Let me see if I can call.
Complicated.
Okay, hold on.
Are you trying, Lauren?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you.
All right, am I here?
Yes.
Oh, yes, you are. Yay!
All right, fantastic. Let me just try and mute on my side of my computer. I'm getting an echo. All right, thank you so much. Let me just first start by saying the good news is we are not taking down trees and replacing them with palm trees, as the visual seems to show. All right, so that's the upside of this. And secondly, I want to say I'm very grateful for the detailed review and consideration and the understanding of the trade-offs between visual historical quality, but also the interest in energy conservation and, you know, the challenges of climate change that are upon us. So I understand the tension and that this is something that you all will probably face with greater frequency. So just appreciation for that. The crux of this dilemma is that, of course, we would move the panels that are facing the street on the porch roof if we had a place to put them. We put them up on the upper roof, and especially the space that we have, which is where the panels already are on I believe it's the south-facing gable, south and east-facing gable. There's too much shadow, and we don't get any production. So the implication of taking the 3 panels that we have off the front porch means that we have a direct cost on the efficiency of the project. This is a 20 to 25 year project. And the assumption is that if we make that is a cost that we would end up incurring, you know, essentially annually of the lost potential of the energy production. Now, I asked Errol, our designer, that I don't even know if he's on the call with us, to be able to communicate to you all what the implications were in terms of a percentage loss in efficiency of the project. And I never got that data. I'm not sure why, but I can assume that it is meaningful. I don't know how meaningful, but the implication is, okay, so we have something that panels that are, you know, silver, and they are, yes, there is visibility from almost every angle on the house, and there's some precedent from an additional project that's on our street, 3617 22nd Street. But nonetheless, I feel like, or at least my argument would be, of course we would move them, but we can't without an impact to the quality and efficacy of our project. And so we feel stuck, right? I want to be responsive to what you've said about the impacts to historical quality and in the visualness of the panels, and yet if we move them, it comes at a direct cost to us over a 20-year period. So I'm not sure what to do, and I don't have Errol on the phone here to tell me whether anything else, any other details can be provided that would make this work. Because as you can see, the place where we have the most panels, right, that are facing primarily west there, so can see next to where the car is, you know, I thank you for putting the cursor over that. That roof space is already occupied. So the only space that's not occupied is where the production is the worst. So in other words, we'd be taking panels from the best area of production and putting them in the worst, only for the issues of visibility. So that's my last point. I don't have more to add. I could wax on about why things matter here in terms of living through climate change, but you know all of that. So I leave it to you all to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here's your-
Here's your report.
You're in the hot seat tonight.
I
All these
know.
reports.
Could I? This is a contributing structure, and a number of buildings, they are non-contributing structures. The first solar panel setup that I recall we reviewed was for a non-contributing structure, and we said we would make an exception to the idea that these panels were facing directly to the street at a much steeper angle on a non-contributing structure, that was fine because it was a non-contributing structure. This is a contributing structure. The roof is not the original, porch roof is not the original. It's apparently a sunroom with, as said before. I'm not objecting to it. The reason we asked the board to review this is the first I know that we have been faced with the solar panels facing the street directly on a contributed structure. That's the reason. If the board wants to do that, I'm not sure that, I think sustainability is a major issue. When I was at Park Service, I fought tooth and nail on these issues, even though I'm an historic architect. So board needs to recognize this is an exception. And if you want to say that sustainability is more important, and that this is, I'm perfectly fine with that. And I think actually, I would say we probably should, but you are setting a precedent because we drew the line before non-contributing structures.
I wonder, I don't think that we're sacrificing one for the other, especially on a project like this. I'm glad this came up because it forces us to ask a question: are we punishing people in historic districts who have a south-facing frontage? Doesn't make a lot of sense, especially on a roof that isn't historic. It's a new standing seam roof. It's clear that that solar panel won't. No one's going to mix up with the historic structure. Does it actually diminish the quality of historicity of that building in this context? I'm not sure I feel that way, especially because they're going out of their way to make sure that it's silver, it's not glaring me in your face, it's not a funky angle, it's with the existing slope line. Yes, it's visible, but maybe that's not even a bad thing. Maybe by incorporating it sensitively, improving that historic architecture still has a place in a contemporary world with modern sensibilities and part of it.
I think those are both really good points. And I'll add another one, which I think is probably more of a philosophical concept, which is that these houses in Maywood are all old. They have had previous owners and they will have future owners. And the people who do the work on these houses, that work in certain cases can't be removed, but in certain cases it can. And so with solar panels, they can be removed. They don't really impact this historic structure in any permanent way. And given that point, together with this whole need to try and create sustainable electricity, we need electricity. These people are generating their own power. And And I completely agree that I live in Bay wouldn't have a south frontage roof too. And I feel like I would be penalized in that situation.
We were in the 19 teens and we were trying to protect historic properties. I don't think any of us would say that those historic houses couldn't have bathrooms and electricity added. And I think we're at an era now where we're moving into sustainable. Now, there may come a time when hopefully we won't need solar panels. They're a real pain. But when I saw this, I knew immediately there was no place else you could put them. And I'm actually surprised that they didn't ask to put more of them on south facing. It makes a huge difference in the power that you get out of it. I'm only using panels on my south facing, but I have a big enough one that it'll run the house. He uses a lot of electricity. That is a lot of solar panel. But I assume they've used the algorithm and they figured out this is what they need. But I don't think any of us would have said, you can't put a bathroom in and you can't put any electricity. You can't, use, get rid of the asbestos and use something else. I mean, there comes we have to, we definitely want to preserve these properties as most as we can, but still have them be livable and modern and efficient, all of those things that, nobody would want to live in a house that didn't keep up with the times. So I'm very strongly in favor of this.
I think this is a topic that I'm sure, the professional historic preservationists, which doesn't include me, I'm sure that this is too hot an issue not to have been discussed at professional conferences. And I guess what are other historic preservation boards doing about this, if you know?
No, so that's a good question. We don't have a comparison based on conference participation, but Michael did do some research on what a few other localities around us do. Are you able to share some of your findings for context?
You guys are so good at anticipating.
You were expecting questions. So we're prepared.
So I looked at DC, Alexandria, and then I looked at the National Park Service guidance for solar panels. I thought that would all be most comparable and most appropriate to use. So for DC, they actually have an entire guideline dedicated to sustainability that they use to help map out with a lot of different things in the district. DC pledged to require 100% of the city's energy be produced by renewable resources by 2032. And they want 10% of that to be generated from solar energy systems. And I thought this quote was really telling. It says, as such, it is imperative that our city's older and historic buildings fully contribute. So that's DC's perspective. They do say that they want the solar installations to be compatible with like the architectural and neighborhood character. They don't require, or they don't recommend that solar panels like add any like height or massing to buildings, and that they don't cover or obscure distinctive roof features. They prefer the location of solar panels to be on like secondary elevations to minimize their visibility. But if they are visible, it didn't say anything about it's off the table if it is visible. But they do say that they recommend low profile panels that are flush with the roof. And a lot of the drawings too, the other thing I'll note though is in DC, a lot of the homes, well not a lot, but there are quite a few, are the like row houses with a flat roof. So it does give it a different, that's a lot easier with solar panels, because it's all behind a Yeah, so that's DC's. Alexandria had a little bit of an older document. I think it was in the 90s that talked about it. So Alexandria's guidance was rooftop solar collectors, so like this, are generally discouraged. It's not compatible with the architectural character of the historic district. Keep in mind though, this was in the 90s, so I'm just tossing that out there again. Roof-mounted solar collectors should be located on the most visually inconspicuous area of a structure, consistent with the requirements of maximum access to the sun. They also asked that the trim work on solar collectors be to match the color of the roof. That, just to tie it back, that applicant today is doing that. And then it should just be mounted at an angle which is as close to the roof slope as possible. And NPS was also, sorry, National Park Service was also fairly open to the use of solar panels. They asked that they were okay with them being visible, but not like obviously visible, and that to try to hide them behind other elements, and then that would help meet the SOI standards. So a little bit of different things, but I think generally speaking, in what I've seen, preservation, the field of preservation is moving much toward, or moving more towards a seeing solar panels as compatible with historic structures.
Does that help?
Just a, we're not talking about Mount Vernon or Monticello.
That's right.
Okay, we're talking about homes that ordinary people live in and that want, sustainability. So, and I do know that I've visited historic structures that when they were turned into historic house museums, they've taken out the bathrooms so that, for.
Yeah, but they don't live in it anymore, do they?
And for purposes of historic preservation, they're trying to present them at a certain date. Okay, so if they were built before bathrooms, they've taken out the bathrooms in order to present them as museums. But that's a special. I mean, I think you have to really do this on a case by case basis. You really can't say. That's why I appreciate thoughts about this being our first instance of a contributing structure, maybe because I think it's important that we have this discussion. But I also think that if we make this decision, we can't really deny it to anybody else. I mean, we have to apply the same standards to everybody in Maywood.
But what Alex said also would go into the same. I mean, that's still part of the precedent, that it fit with the house,
Right.
that it be integrated into the fabric as best it can be.
Right.
So I'm gonna jump in because I do have a different opinion and then some others. I'm all for almost all the panels, but the ones on the front roof, to me, on the first story of the front porch, I walked by there today, and I just really think, they're not just on the roof, they're kind of in between the house. So, front porches on these historic homes are really important. And to stick some solar panels on top, to me, they would be very, very visible. And I would encourage the applicant to find that there's only 3 there. I know it gets a ton of sun. You can see from this picture that it does, but to find anywhere else, and I would agree with the staff report for, partial approval, but not on that first story porch roof. I just think also on a precedent setting level that if all the Maywood porch roofs have solar panels on them, it kind of ruins the historic district. Just don't. I love all the other ones, and there's a ton. And so I do question, do we have to have people, if he's going for 100% replacement of his electricity? I mean, or a certain amount of savings. I'm not sure, if we have to let him actually generate electricity, what level we really have to go to. I think we can kind of balance the beauty of the historic structure with the sustainability of having several solar panels on your second floor roofs.
I've worked with a couple. I've had estimates for my own house and worked with another project, and sometimes they try to sell it to you based on the fact that you're going to be producing excess energy and making money off of it. So I don't know exactly, the applicant was here and he didn't say. I think his gain is just, his objective is just to produce enough electricity for their home, but along what you're saying, somebody is trying to put them on, so they can make money off of it. So they lower their electric bills, and I think, it's a balancing act.
I think that's immaterial. I really do.
Sorry, 1 second. Mr. Hogan, please speak. Your hand's up, Mr. Hogan.
Thank you. I appreciate the dialogue. It's very helpful. I just need to be clear that I wish we could move them. There's no place to go. We have already talked about that, and not all panels are the same. They will produce more on the front. I also think, interestingly, the visibility is stronger from the panels on the south-facing gable than they are actually in the front porch. So in fact, because of the angle, because it is not acute, that the visibility, at least from my perspective, is not that significant, given the angle is so low. In the end, I have to be frank, because this project requires so many panels to make it work, because our house is not ideal for solar, but we're so committed to energy efficiency and the issues of climate, and feel that we want to do our part as citizens in that respect, that we don't believe that we can do this project unless it has the design that it currently has. We would probably cancel the project if we could not get it approved. Just to be perfectly honest, those 3 panels will probably make too much of a difference for the efficiency. Thank you.
I mean, I don't really think that the aesthetic look of those panels on that porch is inferior to the aesthetic look of a standing seam old roof. I mean, I guess I don't see the problem really. I mean, they will, in the 5 inches, did you say? And is that from the roof to the top of the panel?
Yeah, so it would be from the roof, to like the very face of the panel would be 6 inches.
To the top.
To the top of it.
Right. Yeah, and when I see those panels on roofs, I think they actually look okay. I don't think they're ugly at all.
They're well installed.
And it appears from the way that they planned it, they are going to be nicely installed. Just from the pictures, it looks like they've been. Can I say one other thing? And, even if he were generating more electricity than he's going to use, he'd be returning that to the grid. We need more electricity. It's not just a question of making money. It's a question of generating, supplying electricity, which is going to become more and more in demand. People with electric cars, it's just, we need it, man.
I can understand both sides of that argument, but I'll say that in Virginia, there's a Virginia state law. They will not buy your electricity. So if you produce more than you use, you just end up having it go into the system. I mean, it's not, he can't be making a profit out of this under current restrictions unless they've changed them. But, Dominion's powerful, and I don't think that Dominion will be changing this law anytime soon. That's really not for I don't know that. This is a comment from when I had mine installed. But I would say, I think we'll get used to these panels. I mean, I just think, I still feel like we're going to have to be, no one will want to live in a historic property if they're unable to make use of modern technology in a way that still respects those properties. And I think if we go down a road where if you buy a historic house, you're signing off in perpetuity for not putting in the latest technology, as long as it can be integrated or removed, should it become Jefferson's home, then I think we're gonna back ourselves into a terrible corner where properties like this. Well, but windows are.
There's much more efficient windows that you could do if you didn't have to do wood windows. So I think, I'm in, you're entitled to your opinion, but I just think, on balance, I think this sets a big precedent that you could pretty much put solar panels anywhere on the historic buildings' roofs. And I don't want to do that. I would rather balance it.
What you're saying, because it does set a precedent. It does need to be monitored carefully. And whether it's at a weird angle, it's coming up and it's a brand new structure, that would be incredibly distracting and it would impact the historicity. But it's not a brand new structure. A window does make sense to regulate. It's an integral part of the structure. I realize that it's part of the architecture, but it does, solar panel feels a little bit like furniture. Nobody's regulating their lawn furniture. It's applied, it's sitting on the top of their roof. Might be bolted down, but you could bolt down a chair too. So to me, this feels like something that's not detracting from it, but it's set out, and more importantly, it can be removed. So you don't want to punish him.
I have another comment.
And she's online.
Oh, actually,
So go to Rebecca.
Rebecca, please give your comments.
I agree with Kaylee. I understand that solar panels are removable, and I think that, yes, this is precedent setting, and I think that by accepting them on the other elevations, it is trying to find a middle ground, and I understand the owner's perspective of needing to look at it from an entire energy efficiency, but I agree. I think putting them on the front porch roof is far too visible, and I think it would be a mistake.
Laura?
Hi, I thank you. I appreciate it. I just wanted to throw in there. I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of perspective as well. The Historic and Cultural Resources Plan, which everybody is very excited about, that got adopted in November, has a ton of language in the plan concerning this as really trying to be very flexible and try and encourage historic property owners to help their properties be energy efficient, specifically provide support for retrofitting historic properties for improved energy efficiency by promoting and allowing efforts to integrate better building techniques and technologies. We also say a lot very similar to what many of you members have said, through careful planning and consideration, balancing historic preservation with a desire to achieve higher sustainability standards will help the county achieve carbon neutral community. And I could probably give you 3 more statements, but I won't go on and on. I just wanted to kind of reiterate that we are trying to push for that for the next 10 years with this plan to really encourage it. And that's one of many goals that we have in the program, to have support for these types of projects.
Thanks, Lauren.
I'd just like to say something else. And this, I don't know if this is really relevant, but this technology is developing all the time. And there is a new a company that has come out with shingles that are solar shingles. So you don't have to put them up on the 5-inch. So this is not what's being proposed to us, but in the future, for historic houses especially, they're recommending this because it doesn't, you don't have the 5-inch panels on top of the roof. So it's into this panels essentially are integrated into the roof. So I think in a place like Maywood, that type of installation would probably make a lot of sense, but this is not what proposed in Omaha. So we're not, just because we're approving this tonight doesn't mean that the guy next door isn't gonna call this new company and get something, looks better on historic structures. It isn't as prevalent in terms of sticking up on a panel above the roof.
Maybe as part of the wording, to approve it or whatever actually we were to approve, making a note, so it does set a precedent for emphasizing the lowest profile and most possible within the context, because those shingles are really,
I know they are,
but they're getting a lot better. And in 10 years or 30 years, maybe it'll be an even better system. I've seen these transparent ones people are playing with. I think it's really cool, but we don't want to preclude that in the future, and maybe that's a way to motivate it. Right now, he's doing a very low profile, very cost effective way to do it. And in 30 years, the guy who's living there might do a shingle system.
I like that idea very much. That we include that in that's based on current technology, what it was. That'd be a good idea.
I just have some pictures of the current ones. You said you had some, the non-contributing structures. Yeah. Maybe
Yes,
have them.
I do. Good questions. Okay. So this was, I believe this is actually the first project that the HALRB looked at and approved. So this was approved in 2014, and you can see the solar panels right there. And this house is actually just a couple down from Mr. Hogan, the current applicant. Yes, it's a blue house in case we all forgot what it was. So this is another one, but you can't see them. They're on the rear. So a lot of the projects that have come forward, they've been non-contributing, or if it is a contributing structure, the solar panels have been placed on a rear addition or a non-visible location. So you can't see them here, but this is the other example. Here's another one. This is another contributing house. The solar panels right here. It's a little bit difficult to see, but they've hit it between the 2 gables. But this is the public right of way, so you can kind of see it. This is another project. Again, a little bit difficult to see, but they installed solar panels on the dormer here of the garage. And then there are actually solar panels on the back side of the house as well. You really can't see them from the public right of way. But this one was one of our more recent examples. I think this was in, 2020. And there was some debate about the visibility of the panels on the garage, but ultimately it was approved because it was set really far back from the public right. And then this is the most recent, so some of you might remember this one, but this is a non-contributing structure. This is the front, the back side, which is where they installed all of the solar panels. And you can see it from the public right of way because like the street, it's hard to see in these images, but the street angles up. And when you walk up on this side here, you can see the solar panels. So those are the 5 examples in Maywood of solar panel usage.
Let's go around the board real quick. Mark, do you have any commentary, any comments?
Actually, the owner actually alluded to the one concern I had. I think he intended to, but I originally thought that the porch would be an issue, but I think because of the slope of that porch roof being relatively low, I don't think those panels are an issue. I have a slight concern about the south gable you referenced. Those 2 particular panels, I think, would be the most visible and objectionable. But at the same time, historic structures are in and of themselves an example of sustainability over time. They have been maintained over time. They have continued with us. And so since it's not a permanent fixture, though I still have concerns about those 2, I would be fine overall approving this project.
And
I mean, I think ideally everyone might have them on the back of their house, but that's not how the sun works. And, you know, with the sustainability goals that we have, I think what Alexandra said is convincing. I mean, the house needs to be workable in order to be preserved, so.
Andrew?
I mean, where I work at the State Department, we kind of have a similar stance to what Michael said about the National Park Service, sort of balancing low profile and wanting to be sustainable with the aesthetic. But I mean, we've also had projects in some of our historic buildings where we want them to be sort of visible as like a look at how the United States is being sustainable and whatnot. Obviously, this is a much smaller scale, but it would be like, you know, to your neighbors, to the, you know, county in general, when people are walking by, like, you know, oh, this is a place that cares about this. It's a place that's interested in this. So I don't know. I'm largely okay with it, but my experience, I agree with everyone else. It's a balancing act. There's no right or wrong answer.
Carmel, do you have any opinions?
No, it would be great if, I think as it was stated, the technology is ever changing. I just don't know how long that may take before we can deal with the shingles, replacing the panels. But that I think that would rectify everything, but we just don't know where we are, how far along with that.
I guess the only thing I would have to add, I would say that it would be, I think it'd be helpful now or in the future also. I mean, I think if it's a matter of sort of making sure that you get the best bang for your buck based on particular orientation, it'd be nice to see sort of the science behind that. I mean, not that we're like Christians here, but I think if it's important that the panels be essentially, you know, south facing, public right of way facing, you know, very, very visible, be important for sort of the actual sort of the shade studies and sort of metrics around that to be presented to the board. So we sort of have the sort of backup to understand that essentially that the panels must go where they're going. I mean, I definitely, you know, take it for Errol's word. It'd be nice to see that backup because it is very, very visible. And I mean, I kind of came into the night sort of valuing myself, sort of, you know, sort of seeing how that visibility is sort of. I mean, the visibility right of way. I think in a way is fine, but it also does change the look of the neighborhood. And I mean, that's not a bad thing, but it is a very precedent-setting event. So I think with it being such a big sort of precedent-setting event, I think it'd be nice to see sort of the science, technology behind what we're doing. Actually, let's have that back up. That's my 2 cents about that.
Can I just say that kind of on the subject of precedent setting, if we're going to see stuff like this again, I would really like to see renderings of home with solar panels on. Because we're kind of guessing our way through this. I was surprised we didn't see any tonight. And I think that should be a necessity. Just have, now granted, people are going to pick the best rendering they can find. Okay, I understand that. But it would be nice to have a visual reference for us than just us saying, oh, I think I know what it looks like on the roof, especially when it's contributing structure.
Good point.
We asked for renderings for every other type of project for that. So.
Maybe Merrick does know a little bit, but I am confused because there seems to be tons of panels. Whereas then like that little blue house had 2 panels. So I am confused why so many panels are needed.
Well, that was part of my question because they seemed like an awful lot of panels.
Lots of panels.
But I think in this case, we're trusting that, they're expensive. So I don't think very many homeowners are going to buy more panels than they have been. It's been proven to them they really need to run their house. They base it on the number of kilowatts you use in a 6-month period without the panels. And then they calculate what it needs to cut to that power.
So I'm gonna make a motion we can vote on, kind of how we all land on it. But I think just based on what I'm hearing on the table, we'll go with this. So I move that HLRB approve COA 24-07 at 3511 22nd Street North in the Main Historic District for request to install solar panels. Request to install multiple solar panels on the main secondary slopes of the roof. I guess pose an application, and I'll leave it at that. But if I want to add something about, with regard to sort of making sure that you have the most sort of, just making sure that the panels are sort of low profile or something like that. I don't.
You want to take a stab at that, Alex?
It
was your idea.
Sure. Maintaining the lowest cost-effective profile available. Okay.
Back to the.
Was it fact from the historicity of the structure?
Okay.
Just a point of fact, the staff report concluded that these panels met the Secretary of Interior standards for solar panels.
I don't think I said that outright, but I think that I said that it could comply with standard number 10, which essentially says you could remove, like if there's something temporary, that it would leave the fabric and the structure intact.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
But also they comply with the Maywood guide.
Yes, that was just, yes, yeah. So it's just that I couldn't approve it as staff.
I understand.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I guess my point is I don't think that language is necessarily needed. But if you think we should have it, I don't object to it.
Treat it back, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But
I move that the HALRB approve COA 2407 at 3511 22nd Street North in the Maywood Historic District for the request to install multiple solar panels on the main and secondary slopes of the roof as proposed in the application with an emphasis on maintaining the lowest profile available that doesn't detract from the historicity of the structure.
And make that
I'm
distinction.
actually gonna change structure to building.
Contributing. Because it's the house, not,
Okay.
another building.
Richard's point, it might not be. Important. But if you are, then I think it's the lowest cost effective.
So the only thing I would say is staff against cost effective is that something that the HALRB is not really, they don't take that.
You don't consider that in other circumstances. So why would this be?
Yeah.
I think the language is fine, and it probably is good for precedent setting purposes that in the next application, the applicant comes in with the lowest profile.
And respects its stores.
We've talked about like the technology too. Like, I mean, if somebody in 30 years came to us and wanted to do the exact same thing, maybe we would say no because there's better technology that costs the same or less, like the shingles or whatever. So, you know, but we've kind of talked about that already, and it's.
My concern is holding somebody to insane expenses.
What did you say?
If we were to hold somebody to an extent that something's available, doesn't mean it's accessible.
I think so long as it's below 6 inches.
Yeah, so that's kind of the standard that they would follow. I think that, like, let's say a case came forward and they were proposing 7 inches, you all could say that doesn't jive with the guidelines.
Yeah, I can see changing the way we guide it in the future. You know, get more cost-effective technologies developed, but, you know, the 6 inch, I think we could actually change that.
Sure, allowing
You know, you have to look at the.
allowing people to take off their metal, tin roofs to put on solar shingles, right? They're historic roofs. Second. Can you read it back,
Yeah.
please?
I move that the HALRB approve COA 24-07 at 3511 22nd Street North in the Maywood Historic District for the request to install multiple solar panels on the main and secondary slopes of the roof as proposed in the application, with an emphasis on maintaining the lowest profile available that doesn't detract from the historicity of this contributing house.
My understanding of that motion is that then does allow him to proceed with the project as he has it planned.
Yes.
That's correct. Yeah.
Quantity and price.
As
Yeah. Just call the roll.
Did you have a question, Greg?
Well, I mean, I don't know if we want to mention that we have the motion.
Just call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Dreyer,
Yes.
Mr. Fackler,
Yes.
Ms. Foster, Ms. Ham,
Yes.
Mr. Hanley,
Yes.
Mr. Laporte,
Yes.
Ms. Meyer,
No.
Ms. Myers, Mr. Turnbull,
Abstain.
Mr. Winchell,
Yes.
and Mr. Woodruff.
Yes.
Motion does pass.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Mr. Logan.
Thank you all for your sincere consideration. I am very, very deeply grateful for the depth of the conversation. Apart from the decision, I just really appreciate the minds and the thoughtfulness and the research you put into this conversation. And I thank you very much, and I look forward to keeping you updated how it unfolds. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for waiting.
Of course.
You want to sit here? I'll move my stuff.
Yeah. Move one down.
Lauren, I know you wanted to give your staff report first. Did you Did you want me to run the slides that I have and then while you're talking, or do you just want to talk and then let the applicant share their slides?
I think if everyone can bear with me, I will be talking for 5 minutes. So you don't need to go through your slides if it's okay, as long as everyone doesn't space out too much.
Sure they won't. All right.
It's all you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. So tonight, guess what? It's Barcroft Apartments again. So appreciate it. So appreciate everybody being here. That the Gerald Lynch project team is here, but I would like to give an actual staff report, a summary of what was submitted. But Lauren, I know you're here, and did you want to introduce your team real quick?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Lauren Riley with National Fuji. It's great to see you all again. Coming back. I don't know what I'm going to do. I was thinking today, what am I going to do with my win?
Moving, we're moving.
Right. Yeah. And then on the line with us, the rest of our team is available online. We have Trace Rees, Jared Lynch, and Micah. We have our whole suite. Let's see, Chelsea Thomas with the architecture, Jeff Krebs with Micah. He's our civil engineer, and he can talk about the landscaping, whatnot. If you have questions, then we have Brian Breesy with Jared.
Great. Thanks so much for introducing everybody. And they'll be able to answer any questions when it's their time for their presentation. So on that, let's get this 5 minutes done. So everybody, the Barcroft Apartments is a garden apartment community located along Columbia Pike. Barcroft is identified in the Columbia Pike Neighborhood Area Plan known as the Form-Based Code. This item is coming to the HALRB as an informational item, and no HALRB motions are needed at this time. The proposed work will be in Section 7, which was constructed between 1947 and 1948. Section 7 of Barcroft includes buildings 44 through 48. The applicant is required to follow Part 7 of the Conservation Area Standards in the Form-Based Code. The Gerald Lynch project team has presented to the HALRB for multiple renovation projects, with the last one being in Section 1. Each renovation project has involved the project team applying for affordable housing tax credit financing from Virginia Housing, which needs to adhere to Virginia Housing's minimal design and construction requirements, which the project team is seeking waivers. The project's team current proposal is for renovations and alterations to buildings 47 and 48 in Section 7 of Barcroft. The project scope includes the repairing of exterior masonry, such as repointing deteriorated mortar, and repainting previously painted brick as necessary, cleaning and washing all existing brick facades, removing and replacing the aluminum double hung and casement windows with new aluminum windows to match the original design, removing and replacing existing mechanical systems and patching the brick walls where those systems were located, adding new exhaust penetrations, removing and replacing non-original light fixtures with new compatible fixtures, repairing and or replacing damaged roofs in kind, repairing and painting numerous architectural elements such as the metal railings, shutters, entry doors and frames, steel lintels and existing wood fascia and trim, replacing damaged attic louvers in kind and painting them, creating outdoor amenity spaces and landscape improvements behind Building 47, creating 2 accessible units in each building for a total of 4 units by creating new entry openings and windows, modifying existing window well area near Building 48 to provide an accessible entry, and the removal of a red maple tree near Building 47. The project team is proposing other aspects to meet Virginia housing requirements, including installing canopies above accessible entrances and or adding canopies above all entrances, and providing vinyl or aluminum cladding on existing wood trim. The Gerald Lynch project team attended the March 6, 2024 hybrid DRC meeting. The DRC questions focused on understanding the scope better, such as where those 4 new accessible entries were being proposed and how an existing window well area at Building 47 would be modified to provide an accessible route to the new entry. During the DRC meeting, the project team presented that the aluminum double hung windows would be replaced with vinyl windows. However, this proposed material has now been changed. And that was about the extent of the DRC discussion. And now for staff recommendations. We support the aspects of the project that follows Part 7 of the Conservation Area Standards in the Neighborhood Form-Based Code, such as repairing, replacing in kind, cleaning the elevations, removing non-historic exterior features, adding landscape improvements behind Building 47, and modifying the existing window well area at Building 48 to provide an accessible entry. These specific items follow the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation of historic properties, specifically standards 1, 2, and 9. A recent update from the project team has indicated that the window replacement material will now be aluminum. Therefore, this will be an in-kind replacement and also follows Part 7 of the Conservation Area Standards of the Neighborhood Form-Based Code. Although aspects of the project scope are not consistent with Part 7 of the Conservation Area Standards, staff supports the new exhaust penetrations and the necessary changes to create 4 accessible entries and new window openings at the 2 buildings. The new exhaust penetrations are necessary to upgrade the residential units, and they will occur at the rear elevations of the buildings, which will be a minimal change to the building's exterior. Concerning the 4 new accessible entries at buildings 47 and 48, traditionally staff would recommend new entrances to be located on the side or rear elevations. However, because they must be near accessible pathways and parking areas, staff sees this as a special exception necessary to convert existing units into accessible units, specifically within the historic buildings at Barcroft. Also, the accessible entrances have the appearance of secondary entrances, and they do not compete with the more ornate main entrances. And for the items required by Virginia Housing, if a waiver is not granted, staff supports canopies over the accessible entrances and the cladding of existing wood trim in either vinyl or aluminum. If the canopies are installed over the new accessible entrances or above all the entrances, staff does not believe this will detract from the main facades. These canopies are compatible to the overall design of Barcroft and will be mounted in mortar joints so as not to cause damage to the historic brick material. Concerning the cladding of the wood trim, staff considers the cladding of existing wood trim materials as a minimal change. The applicant would be required to repair any deteriorated wood prior to cladding it with vinyl or aluminum. And although this cladding will be a visible barrier, the wood material will still exist and the cladding treatment can be reversed. Lastly, concerning the removal of the red maple tree, the project team indicated that the tree's health would be negatively impacted by the construction activity and that its current location is too close to Building 47. Further, the project team recognizes the importance of retaining Barcroft's tree canopy and will follow the county's tree replacement program. So staff, we kind of defer to the county's urban forestry division towards the trees, the treatment of the trees at Barcroft. So we suggest that they continue having those conversations with them. And that really concludes my staff report. So thank you. If no one has glazed over too much, Lauren, this is when you get to dance and sing. So please go right ahead and go provide your presentation.
All right, thanks, Lauren. I'm just gonna repeat everything that she said, but with pretty pictures, really. So if you did zone out, we'll go over everything again really quickly. Brian, if you could bring up the slides.
Gotcha.
Just run through a few slides with you all and give Chelsea with Mosley an opportunity to talk about the facade visions as well. We go to the second one.
Yep, give it a second.
Got its best tonight.
I was at a board meeting this morning where it took us like 15 minutes to get the owl disconnected. We could hear them on one device but not the other, so this is a upgrade. All right, so just to reorient everybody to where we are at Barcroft, as a reminder, we've kind of flipped the orientation for you. North and to your left, Columbia Pike is to your left. And the project area for this use permit is outlined in red. As Lauren mentioned, it's in phase 2 of Barcroft in section 7. So that's the second phase of development that came later in the 1940s and early 1950s. And then we've also shaded in gray for you all of the other renovation use permits that we've already walked you through. Phase 1 in last July, phase 2 in December, and then phase 3, which we all just looked at a month ago. So that should be fresh in your minds, which is good because this renovation use permit is going to be very similar to that one in terms of adding those 4 new accessible units, pulling some window wells down to create those new accessible unit entrances and upgrades to the landscaping as well. Yeah, the next slide. And then here's just an aerial photo again to show you where those two buildings are within the larger Barcroft site. 2 buildings, about 73 units. They're all 1 and 2 bedroom units. Next slide. Here's some photos for you of building 47. The first one is taken right at the corner of South George Mason Drive and 13th Road South. So you can see this is kind of a long building with 2 different facades with painted brick and the original red brick. And Brian, you can put your cursor to the corner of that building where the area well is. So that will be, in a minute, we'll show you another closer photo, but that's where one of the accessible unit entrances will be. We'll open up into a corridor to take you to those 2 converted units. And then the second photo is just taking a little bit further down George Mason. The third one's from inside that courtyard. We've got quite a large interior courtyard here. And then that last photo is taken from up the hill. So you can see kind of the grade as you're stepping up that building. Next slide. And we did hear from the DRC a couple of weeks ago that just like a little more context as to where we are, where these accessible entrances are. So we've added some more existing photos for you to be able to see where it is. We'll be pulling down those windows to create the two new entrances here. So the first photo is that corner that Brian had just pointed out to you before with that retaining wall and pipe railing there. So we're gonna kind of take out that first portion of the wall and put in a ramp that gets you up into those accessible unit entrances. And then the third photo, the third and fifth photos are really just to show you the condition of those windows. As Lauren mentioned, we'll be replacing all the windows on this building as we have with all the previous buildings, and because their condition is quite poor. We did look into this, and Sarah Trace on. We think these actually might be the original windows, but they're such disrepair that they do need to be replaced, and we will be replacing them with a window. And that fourth photo is kind of an interesting condition here in this building. There's a through passageway into the back courtyard, kind of midway up that side road as you come up the hill there. Side.
Are you keeping that?
Yes, we're keeping it. More so just to note that in terms of accessibility, you'll see this on a later slide when we get to the site plan. We have to put a ramp in the back of the courtyard as well to get folks to the amenity space there, because you can't get there through this passageway. There's steps in the way. Next slide. And then this is building 48, which is just one long kind of stick building that sits up there at the top of the hill once you come up 13th Road. And as you see in the first and second photos, the grade slopes. It's high on that left corner and it comes down, exposing more of that basement forward. And you see those basement level units on basement windows on the right hand side. We'll be pulling some of those down and create the 2 new accessible unit entrances there. What's there today is maintenance area. That kind of that basement level has some has a maintenance shop in it, but it's a really good opportunity for us. This is an excellent location to create accessible units because your parking is right in front of those units, and it's nearly at grade. There's not much that you need to do to get from your parking space into your unit. So that's why we chose this location. It's a really good opportunity for us here. And then we'll also on that side elevation on the set photo number 3, we'll be moving, I think we're gonna be moving that door further to the right because now we're pushing the maintenance shop to the back side of that building. We have 2 new units at the front. You'll recall there's 73 units across these 2 buildings today. We are creating 2 new units here, so there'll be 75 when we're all said and done. Next slide. And then this is a summary of the renovations that Lauren just went through. I've just highlighted a couple of things. Like I said, the scope is very similar to the past 2 renovation projects that you all have seen. Just wanted to highlight 4 new type A accessible units. The 2 units that are in building 48 that we just looked at, they technically won't be considered accessible until we renovate the building across the street to provide access to the amenities in that building's courtyard. unfortunately, because of the grade, the folks in building 48 can't get an accessible route to the amenity space in building 47 because of that hill. But they are right across the street from another amenity space. So they'll be considered fully accessible once that comes online. And then just calling out for you the aluminum windows, we've been able to refine our design and land on the window material since our last DRC meeting. So I'm glad they'll be able to replace those in kind. And then here also we have asphalt roofs, no slate roofs on these buildings, as is typical, I believe, in phase 2. And then we'll be requesting canopies over the accessible unit entrances, just like we did in the last renovation phase. We'll continue to ask for that waiver, or those 2 waivers for the cladding and for the canopies on all other residential entrances. But we keep them on the accessible unit entrances. And then with that, I'm going to hand it over to Chelsea. Oh, no, I always miss this one. I think we had the site, the amenity slide evidence. Yeah, sorry. This is the site plan sketch that shows you that amenity area, building 47. Here now we have a courtyard that's really interior to the building. Everyone's windows kind of face this rare little bit of fishbowl effect. So we'll create a patio there and we'll work through some furnishings that are appropriate for this area. And as you can see, the 2 ramp locations to get you up into the 2 units of building 47 and out to the courtyard. And then pointing up on the top left-hand side to where the accessible unit entrances would be in building 48. So it's kind of faint, a little hard to see. We'll also be striping to provide for accessible parking spaces as well, so people can easily get from the parking lot to their units. And then I will now hand it over to Duffy with Leslie to walk you through the slides.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? I've got a vacuum cleaner right behind me. Okay. So just like in the Bravo phase, we are attempting to have the lightest possible touch on the exteriors. And this is very, very similar to the Bravo project with the scope as described. I don't think I can say it better than Lauren presented it earlier today, but it is, we are showing, the washing of the brick, the replacement of the shingles, repairing of trim and painting, replacement of windows, a replacement in kind of shutters. Doors will be repaired and painted so that is really just, I don't think we need to revisit that scope too much. In the bottom left-hand corner, you can see the areaway that we are creating to provide the accessible entrance into the side of that building, and there's a canopy there to provide weather protection upon entering that space. And then a blow up of that detail is right next to it, where you have standing seam metal awning, again, just like in the Bravo phase, new sconce, new exterior door and window. And this door and window combination is meant to mimic the width of the windows above that. Any questions on this so far? Next slide. Okay, in this view, you can see, well, let's start with the bottom left corner. That is the courtyard side of building 47, where we are creating an interior passageway through to the back of the building so that we can gain access to the amenity space in an accessible path. And it will have a similar door and window and awning there. And then the south interior elevation is shown above that. The elevation B is that little corner that is in the perspective. You can see the door down at the bottom right of elevation B. And the grade slopes up. Next slide. Building 48, as Lauren said, this is just one long rectangular building. And as you move to the right of the building, you can see that the grade really flattens out, making it ideal location for our other 2 accessible units. We are proposing to borrow some space from the existing maintenance area of the property and create 2 accessible units with entrances on the front of the building. We looked at lots of different options here, and we are also trying to provide maintenance with a pathway to get to their space, which will still be located in the building. So you can see that that door on elevation B, north elevation, and the blow up of the detail of the entrances here next to that with the awning again and the window and door combination.
Thanks, Chelsea. This is
No
just
problem.
a summary of our application request. We filed that use permit with the county a couple weeks ago. As always, we do a modification of the form-based code for the existing setbacks, parking to remain. And then we've got those 2 buckets of modifications to the conservation area standards. The first ones are for, in this case, the new openings for the ventilation and new openings for the accessible unit entrances, as well as that fiberglass material for the doors, which is the same thing that you all saw in the past 2 renovation phases. And then that second bucket of modifications to the conservation area standards, those are the ones that we're requesting a waiver for from Virginia Housing, which is the cladding and the canopies over all residential entrances. So I think you all know, I think I gave this update last time that Virginia Housing did accept our waiver request on that first renovation phase that you all saw last year. So that was very encouraging to us. So that's why we're not really showing those elements in our drawings anymore. We, feel pretty good that we'll be able to get those waivers in the future, but we continue to request them just in case, because you never know. So that's it for our presentation. Our team is here. Happy to answer any questions you all have.
For the board. Questions or concerns or doubts?
Great. All right, we'll go home.
I'll just say, I think it looks great.
I will say, I think the architecture team has worked really hard, especially on building 48, to figure out where those new entrances can go while still complementing, fitting in with that existing facade. So I know they spent a lot of time on that.
It's great you found aluminum windows too.
Yes.
That's excellent. Those windows are pretty crafty.
Yeah, they're pretty great. That's why we showed you the photo, because they're original, but they're not great shape.
Are the windows new that you're putting in? New aluminum windows?
I believe so. Do we have Sarah on or Brian on, if you can answer that?
Sorry, I don't know if I quite heard the question, but I am here.
Will the new windows, will the aluminum windows be new onto the building?
The casement windows.
So right now we have aluminum double hung and then also aluminum casement. So we will be replacing them with new windows, but the new windows will match the operation of the historic. Was that, I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm
Yeah,
hearing
I
right.
just have a follow-up question.
Okay.
Where do you find new aluminum casement windows? Who makes them? If you don't mind me asking.
I think there are several window companies. Brian, it looks like you might have an answer, but we haven't really selected any.
We haven't selected a spec yet, but we're confident in our GC to definitely be able to provide that. But just off the top of our head, I wouldn't have an answer to that as well.
I was saying, I was pleased they found them.
Well, I need to buy some.
Do you want us to send you the manufacturer?
That's why I noted I was pleased that we found them. I don't think they're so easy to
You're
find.
looking to.
Once it's decided.
No, I don't need one.
If we have any left over.
No, no. I'll take them.
I think Quaker Windows makes a casement in aluminum, but that's just one example.
Thanks.
Have that, yeah. I think that it's on building, I guess, the eighth of the. I think they did very that maintenance part, not. Very secondary.
So with the maintenance shop, like shrinking essentially, is there still like enough room for them to like, do their thing?
Yeah,
That's
Brian,
accounted for.
the question is with the maintenance shop shrinking in size, is there enough for them to, continue their operation?
Yeah, we think so. We haven't had the full conversation about, the dimensions of the space, but there are also additional spaces on the property where we think they could move to. But for the majority of their operations, we do think that this space would be feasible.
And Lauren, can you say again, how many units are existing and how many will we get now?
There's 73 1 and 2 bedroom units, and we will be getting 75 units because we're adding those 2 basement ones in building 48H.
That's great.
Yeah.
And the project team I know is still trying to figure out what other sections in Barcroft we can make ADA units in the existing buildings. Are we hoping that that's still the case, that there's still some places? I felt like it was phase 2 where you're like, this is it. This is all we're not gonna be able to get any more, but it sounds like you're able to get creative. So is this still a preview?
Yes.
I would say, Lauren, sorry, Lauren, I'll just say with right now, there's not too many, like from our high level view that we've taken, we've had our consultants take a look and there's not too many opportunities. But as you noted here, we probably didn't know about these building 47 and 48 opportunities until we took a deeper dive on the design side. So don't want to say we're out, but they're going to be limited for sure as we keep going forward. And of course, we will continue to do our best to fit them in where we can, and then go really heavy on the new construction side to accommodate.
Right. Okay.
We got that question last week too at the advisory working group meeting for the renovation 3 phase. Someone asked kind of, what are our goals across site wide? And I think it's exactly what Alice said. It's that we have a high level view right now, but you really don't know until you start reviewing each phase. So it's a case by case analysis that we do. I think you all have heard the spiel a couple of times about all the things that have to come together for us to be able to create an accessible unit. The grades have to be right. You have to have parking close by, you have to have mail close by, you have to be able to access amenity space, which is all hard to do in Barcroft because of the topography. So it continues to be in a case by case analysis, but we are trying to find those opportunities with each use permit and acknowledging that we won't be able to convert a whole lot of units with the renovation phases of Dallas. Trying to make
So would either Lauren like this timing in terms of what happens next?
this one? Yes, this one will go, this is our first HALRB meeting. As you all know, we're required to have 2 by the form-based code, so I'll see you all in a month. Talk about whatever you want at that time. TV shows, like whatever's going on. And then we'll expect to go to hearing for Planning Commission County Board in June. The similar track as the previous one. And the reason we're going so closely is because we need to file for the Light Tech tax credit financing by July. So then there's 2 filing deadlines in the year, one in July, one in December. So I imagine we might see us again fall, maybe just depending on
was.
All right. So I guess if there's no other questions, then I guess you guys can skip the next DRC meeting unless anything changes. And if not, then we'll see you in April.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you all.
Awesome.
Let's head down to a science now. The fourth one.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
No.
Each one.
Or
Yeah.
confirm that you can
But
see me
do others, do other developers do that? They bring stuff.
I can see the slides and I can hear everyone.
All right, thank you.
Huge.
Yeah.
All right, so we have another action item for you. We're all going to be presentations tonight. So I wanted to present the Fire Station 8 interpretive panel to the HLRB. And we have two guests with us this evening. We have Mara Burke, who is the project manager from DES, who is in charge of the construction of the new station and the new facility. And we also have Matthew White from Capitol Museum Services based in Manassas. And they have been hired by the county to work on some of the interpretation and the lobby exhibit that's being planned for the new station. So I want to give you just a little context so you have it. And the next slide. Wonderful. All right. So for those of you who've been on the HLRB for a while, likely remember hearing about the Fire Station 8 project several years ago. Pre-COVID, Mr. Wenchels, and HLRB representative for the Public Facilities Review Committee, that helped with getting community input on the design of the new station. And in addition to that, there were discussions about how that new station would reflect the cultural legacy and history of the original station on the site. And so the first integrated fire station in Arlington County was what was known as Fire Station 8. So the picture on the left there is the new building that is almost complete. It's been many years in the making, as Mara can attest, I'm sure. And then during the pandemic, both DES as well as the Historic Preservation team and other colleagues like with the Center for Local History, as well as many community stakeholders from the Halls Home neighborhood, all convened and came up with various aspects of the project of how the history and legacy elements were going to be translated into the new building. To give you an example of some of those exterior features, you can see the Station 8 seal there on the right that is prominently displayed on the new building. There are what we call virtue words that are there on the side elevation. You can't see them in this image, but to honor the actions and heroics of those who served the station. So legacy words such as perseverance and courage and heroes. And those were all decided through a community process. In addition, there's another exterior element that's on that same side elevation that incorporates a timeline walkway with significant dates relevant to the history of the station, and this interpretive panel, which will be accompanying that walkway. So if you could go to the next slide, here's the panel before you, and this has been an ongoing, I think this is version 4 that we've been circulating amongst our stakeholders now for a few months. And so this has been brought to the stakeholders on 2 separate occasions to get their feedback and their comments. And I was not at the meeting last week where the stakeholders gave their final feedback on it. Is there anything from that meeting, Mara, that you would want to share with the HLRB?
They were pretty happy with the layout. They're very excited about the project in general. And the fact that we've done this to sort of honor their legacy. A lot of the people that live in the neighborhoods are the kids of firefighters, and so this means a tremendous amount. So we're pretty excited, and everybody. We took time to figure out which pictures, and the dates were determined before I got there. Before been a lot of input that went in with the neighbors to figure out what should go on the sign, what the date should be. And then Matthew helped us and his team helped us design.
Well, not before. I can't decide that way.
Your team.
Yeah, team, I'll take credit.
Did you have anything you wanted to add, Matt?
Just some, I can't remember, I guess last week's meeting, there were some minor changes to rearrange the pictures to the left to get more alignment. And I forget what those, and then there's something we're supposed to do at the back. But everything stays. They just went,
Okay.
Yeah, just design wise, just compositions.
And we had one more slide if you want to advance my. So there were 2 locations being proposed for the location of where the sign would go. Mara, could you talk them through which location is which and where the stakeholders landed last week in terms of their preference?
Sure. So the slide on the right is along Langston Boulevard. Langston Boulevard is just kind of to your right of this right slide. And in that garden area, is where we talked about putting the sign there. We talked about how it would be a bit more accessible to people. It would get more foot traffic, but it might also get more
negative attention.
Yeah, more, it could be damaged more easily, or
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
more, it could be damaged more easily if it's in a higher traffic area. And then the sidewalk in the picture on the left is along Culpeper Street. And we decided that it would be better to put it in the planter just next to the railing, yeah, right there. And part of the reason for that is it's a little more protected. But typically people will park in the back of the station, and then as they walk toward the front of the station, they've had for days. I don't know if you can see it very well, but there's a granite strip. It's close on the one on the left. It almost looks like a shadow.
I thought it was a shadow at first.
Yeah. So
Oh. There it is.
that's an example of the date.
Oh.
And then it
Well, that's
goes-
shadow.
there's several of them going up. So they go in order from the oldest near the parking lot around, and then it doesn't go up the steps. It goes around the front and then up a ramp to the lobby. And so we thought it would be better to put it closer to the beginning. But we couldn't put it any further down because the stormwater planners are too high for it to be visible at the right.
Thank you.
Is that the entrance to the building?
Yes, you walk into a lobby. The doors are, if you kept going up that stairs, the doors would be on your left. And the lobby will have another display. Historic displays.
Sure. So the virtue words that I mentioned, you can kind of see those there. There's one that says community heroes, and I'm not reading the others too well.
I think that one says courage.
Courage, perseverance, honor. And we went through a long community process with the stakeholders to select those. And to reiterate Lauren's point, and some of the community meetings leading us to our evening with you tonight, to hear members of the community speak about seeing this building come to life and seeing these reminders of the legacy, it's been an emotional journey for a lot of the people involved. Can you go back to the previous slide? Okay, so we're here tonight to present this to you and give you the, like I said, the context for how we got to this point, but also to see if you had any questions or comments, or feedback on the proposed design.
And I might have missed it. How is it displayed? Is it just like a vertical standing in the ground, or is it going to be like tabletop, like tilted?
It'll be tilted at approximately 45-degree angle.
Okay.
Like what we refer to as a reader rail. So you can see it. This will be a little bit higher than waist high, but it's still.
Got it.
So if you go back to the placement one, the next slide over, it'll be in that lower bed.
This one you're talking
No, it'll be on the left, right?
about. This here.
And it'll be closer to the stair rail, or closer to the street side. with sidewalk.
Will it be here or will it
It'll be right at the corner.
Okay.
Right by the rail.
So readable from both places.
I think you're gonna end up standing on the sidewalk, not on the stairs to read.
Okay.
I don't think you'd be comfortable.
will it be kind of facing out like right here?
Yeah, pretty much facing west. The Culpeper Street is directly left of the building.
Had some questions about, I think this is great, okay? And I'm familiar with the property, but when I approach these things, I approach them as, you know, somebody who's trying to read this story for the first time. And I found the narrative, I couldn't understand exactly in many instances what you were trying to say. And I think it's mainly because the people who wrote this are familiar with the property. Okay, so if I come here as a first timer, you know, like 2121 North Culpeper Street, I need to know where this is in relation to this sign. Okay, and then you talk about 1137 Lee Highway, 2209 North Culpeper Street, and then 4845 Lee Highway. All these, and you could have, sometimes when we've seen these historic markers, you do this by putting like dots on a map or something like that. And there's, like, I'm reading this and I said, well, where is 2121 North Culpeper? I think you need some language that says like around the corner or next door or a block away or a half a mile away. So I can't understand like the different locations that you're talking about, where they are in relation to where this sign is. Usually, like, I mean, I've suggested this on several of the historic markers. You start out the first sentence, you say, so put here in the first sentence, because a lot of times people who are writing these are so familiar with the site, they don't understand that, you know, a first timer coming to read this needs to know what happened here. Okay. And so the first, and all these are sentences except for the first one, 1918. So I think you need a verb in there. There's no verb, so you don't really know what happened. And that may be that, you know, you don't really know, was that the first meeting, or, you know, it says first Negro volunteer firefighters in Hall Hill at Sumner School, 2121 North Culpeper Street. Well, is that the first meeting or the first? You have to explain. You need a verb to say what you're trying to convey. Okay, because I don't understand. It does not understand. And then the second entry talks about Halls Hill Volunteer Fire Department, HHPHD, elects first officers. Well, is this the same group that was in 1918, or is this a different group? And so you have some language to say how if it's two different groups, you have to say how the second group relates to the first one or something like that. And then the third one, say officially incorporated. Well, I think you can cross out the word officially because there's no unofficial incorporation. It's either incorporated. So it's an extra word that doesn't really mean anything. And then, you know, again, move to 1137 Lee Highway, current 5000 block. You sort of have to say, I mean, where is that in relation to where we are? Maybe it's where we are, or maybe it's, you need the word here and there, moved here. I just don't know from reading this from his first timer. And then in 1940, and then you say they moved to 2209 North Culpeper Street. I don't know where that is in relation to where I'm standing either. And then you say Arlington County begins 1940. Arlington County begins a paid fire department, but excludes the two Negro fire companies. Well, I think what you're trying to say is excluded the HHPHD and the other Negro fire company in Arlington, but that's not what this says. It just, so I think you need some language, if that's what in fact you intended, but I think that's what you intended to say, but that's not what this says. And then it says Hicks family deeds 2209 lot to HHV, and I don't know where 2209 is in relation to.
It's on the site they're on now.
Okay, but you just have to say that. And then in 1957, you say Alfred Clark named first Negro fire captain. Well, you have to identify, was he the fire captain of the station, or why is his name in here? If he's being
The answer to that is yes.
memorial, okay, so you need to identify that, the captain of fire, leader of fire station
Oh,
8.
captain of,
Yeah, was named first, the leader of this group or something was named first captain, something. So you know who that is and how he relates to this site. And I think that's, and then in 2018, you say celebrates the Station 8 centennial anniversary. So it's either the 100th anniversary or the centennial. Centennial anniversary is not grammatically correct. I mean, the 100th anniversary is the centennial, and our centennial is 100. I don't care which one you use, but you shouldn't use both. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Jerry.
thanks.
And I think that if you wanted to, maybe you could try to take this map and put dots on it, if that's necessary. But I don't really know what this map means. Maybe it would be good to kind of somehow make this map more meaningful than it is. And I know we've had these historical maps before that we put some red dots on top of it or something. I don't, it's, or you are here or something like that.
Maybe outline the current site.
Something like that to sort of say how this map relates to the site, where this sign is going to be, marker is going to be.
And you had a comment, right?
Yeah, I have a couple of things to say. This is an impressive sign. I wanted to ask first, how big is it going to be? Because I think my comment might be affected by that. Is it like?
It's 3 by 4 feet.
So
roughly, roughly.
Okay. I agree that this map is a little confusing. I actually live in this area, so I know exactly where it is, but the words firehouse and black are hard to find, and maybe it will be more obvious if the sign is really big, but there could be like a gold star or something just to make it a little bit more obvious for people who don't understand that. I mean, presumably if you're there, you're aware that you're at the intersection of Culpeper and Langston because that's where you are, but if you could go back to the photos, the photos are great. I don't know if there's space, but if you have the info, it'd be great to put dates on them and maybe just little captions.
Yeah.
The old fire engines.
Funny you should say that. We had several iterations of this before this one.
Oh, really? That had the dates.
The problem was there's such limited photos. We couldn't get dates that actually corresponded with every milestone date in the timeline, and it just got too confusing too quickly. And so we landed on this with the community to have like a sampling of representative photos. I don't know if there's room, Matthew, at the bottom to do like a little key maybe to the specific photos we choose, but that was our first thought, is each date would have a photo, and it just wasn't working.
Even if you put like 1920s to 1930s or something, I don't know.
Or even if it doesn't have a date, but it just says what it is. Because unless they don't know, it could say, early volunteer firefighters or
Fire engine.
Fire engine 1920s or,
if you know that, for example, this is this, and you put the address, then maybe that clarifies a little bit.
I thought of that when I first looked at this, and then I decided that would be too busy. And I think it's really kind of cool. It's like a vestige.
It's got simplified.
Artistic the way it is, and if you have too much language in there, it sort of takes. I think it takes away.
It also allowed the photos.
Pardon?
It also allowed the photos. To be
that's what that's.
And also for context, inside the lobby will be much more bus display. More information.
Okay.
With the same photos.
That for last.
With the same photos.
So you're looking at the.
Some repeats.
Good.
So that's still to come.
Yeah. So in addition to what's on the exterior of the building, we're working with Matthew and his team to create like our first big area within the first floor lobby. So there's going to be display cases. We've gotten donations of artifacts, some photos, memorabilia, that type of stuff will be featured inside. So this is all going to connect once.
Okay, so apologies, because I was.
It's okay.
And my last comment, this is really, really nitpicky, but I stumbled on it a couple of times. The way it has HHDFD station 8th centennial anniversary, like the 8 should just, it should be here.
Okay.
So I was like, what's an 8th centennial? And then and I think there is room to put the 8 on the previous line.
I would agree with that.
Whichever you decide to go with, centennial or anniversary. But
Maybe if we were just without any room in the pictures, maybe just organize chronologically next to a timeline. I remember building on the lower left, but I can't place one on the lower right. So maybe if we just read right to left, even chronologically, help create some context. But it was
Yeah.
That's the difference. Following up with a little bit of kind of what Jerry was saying, we all know that Lee Highway is now Langston Boulevard, but in a couple of years, some people who move here are not going to know that.
Just a comment. I remember when we were, we talked earlier today about the Dan Kane building. And when we were nominating that for the register, I suggested that we not dedicate it as the Dan Kane building because, you know, in 20 years, who's going to recognize? And that motion was, people said, oh, everybody knows Dan Kane. You know, tonight, okay, I proved that, you know, 20 years from the time, people don't know. So I think that's a good suggestion about.
Like, it's nice to remember Dan Kane.
Pardon?
It's nice.
Yeah,
to
but I know,
remember
but you can't assume that people.
I know.
you do say current 5,000 blocks, so it could say current 5,000 block with Langston.
Really leave.
Yeah, right.
It was across the street.
Carmela?
Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to say, looking at the photographs, they're not in chronological order. The first photograph and the first photograph on the upper left and the last photograph on the lower right were taken at the same location, weren't they? Which was at the school. And then the next three photographs, number 2, 3, and 4, were taken in front of that garage that you see, which was on part of the property that the Hicks family donated.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Thank you for that clarification. Did you have any other comments, Carmela?
No, only the photograph with the flagpole is the quote unquote new fire station that they built back in the 60s. So I would imagine that should be the last photograph.
Yeah, and if the Hicks family, as Carmela just said, and she's an expert of this, she knows that the Hicks family donated that lot to the fire station. I think we should change the word deeds to donates. Or donate by deed or something like that, so that they get proper credit for donating that land to.
Yeah,
that's a really important historical fact.
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, so keeping in mind what Carmela just said, if, for example, this is the 1963 station and this becomes photo 6, could it have a 6? And then it could just say new integrated fire station 8 and then just in parentheses 6 or something to link it, maybe?
I'm play with that. And maybe looking at the map too, if there's a way to identify. No, we can look up both of those suggestions.
If you at least know which phase the photos go to. Because I'm sure some people will coincide a lot of it, bigger display, but they might not.
Everyone.
Yeah, so.
Any other thoughts?
It's full of the records are great.
The dates that show up on this, will the dates that show up on this be matched by some of the dates on those
Walkway.
panels, walkway?
Yes.
Good.
They all correlate.
They exactly correlate.
There was a purpose to that.
I just think this is wonderful.
Thank you.
I just think this is wonderful. I mean, I think it shows a great deal of work and sensitivity to the community, and it should have been done 25 years ago. But it's great that it's being done now. And yeah, it'll be really good if there's details about those pictures on the inside.
Is there anything you can say about time location? Openings and exhibits?
We just got our VDOT permit finally after quite a few months. And so you'll see paving going on the next week or two. And then we should be ready to move in. I can't give you an exact date, but shortly after that, we're still ironing out a few things. And then after that, we'll tear down the apparatus bay, put in the gasoline and diesel tanks underground, the paving in, finish the landscaping in the back, and then we'll have an opening celebration in the summer, let's say.
Keep you posted. We hope to see you there.
We'd love to have it.
Great.
So I think what would be helpful, just for the sake of process, if we could do a motion. For the I think just a voting motion is fine. We will continue to all work together to incorporate the suggestions that you all provided.
All right, in that case, I move that HLRB support the panel as presented with any outstanding details to be further discussed.
Second.
Can I amend that to say that the HLRB supports the panel and the establishment of a historical site, a museum or site, whatever you're calling it on the inside? Exhibit, a historical exhibit that's associated with the deep history of this facility.
Second, yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Dreyer,
Yes.
Mr. Beckler,
Yes.
Foster, Ms. Ham,
Yes.
Mr. Hanley.
Yes.
Mr. Report,
Yeah.
Ms. Meyer,
Yes.
Ms. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Turnbull,
Aye.
Mr. Winchell,
Yes.
and Mr. Woodruff.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you for your patience.
Yes, thank you for waiting so long. Hopefully you learned some things about projects.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's great.
Good work.
Yeah. Here.
Maybe break. Done.
Heretofore, I will throw it to Dick regarding the Barcroft odd.
Okay, but also, is Lauren online still?
Yeah, she is.
She is.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you have the little slides? Yeah, okay. So, right. Okay, so Lauren, feel free to jump in here if you want. And in any event, there have been several phone calls on the subject of what's going to happen with the Barcroft development over the next many years. I know we've been looking at individual rehabilitation projects like the one we did tonight, but there's also a grand plan for the entire development or the site, which is the largest apartment community, post-war community in Arlington. And it's an essential property in the age. Huge historic. And the meeting that we had in late February that I attended was specifically, we talked a lot about the historic preservation issues that are coming up on it. And I want to commend Lauren, first of all, for doing a really good report that laid out the historic significance of the buildings and the individual buildings and the history of the buildings and the context of the development in, situated with Arlington's World War II and post-World War II history and how important they are. And not just that, but what a unique sort of biophilic community exists on that hill, because is anybody here familiar with Barcroft, with the property? It's like on a really unique site. It's very topographically challenging. And there are a lot of old trees. It's really a really neat place. So I think Lauren put that in perspective really well. And so what happened at the meeting was the folks from J.R. Lynch, who now own the property, came in. They had previously published a proposal that, and can we go to the next slide?
Yeah.
That for redevelopment of the edges of Barcroft that would conform to essentially that map, which is taken from the Columbia Pike Form-Based Code that was enacted in the early aughts. And what happened in that, in case you don't know, is that yellow area was made a conservation area with the intent to be protected for, we don't know how long, but now we are wanted to be protected in perpetuity. And the areas around the edges, around the blue, or the blue area, the light blue areas are adjacent to the conservation area, and those weren't necessarily intended for the buildings to be completely protected, but that whatever does get developed there would be sensitive to the conservation area. In other words, you wouldn't have like an 8 or 10-story building in those light blue areas. And then on the very outside, and in that sort of upper left-hand corner, which is some of that is now commercial property along Columbia Pike, that was intended to be developed with larger buildings up to 10 stories, as you see, going down toward 4 Mile Run. And so what they did when they came in, when J.R. Lynch came into the meeting that I attended, they had a new sort of proposal wherein they wanted to take that area around Thomas Street, which is that curvy road that is mostly in the yellow, and where on the top side, in the middle, that in the yellow, that's sort of the center of the neighborhood. And what they were proposing was that they would protect all the buildings that are along that road, including up there in the top left-hand side that is now in the light blue. And in return, they would take down some buildings elsewhere. And so I'm going to pass this around. This is sort of what they're proposing now. This is that previous map, and the areas in red pretty much conform to where they plan to demolish and do redevelopment. And what it really is, it's 20 of the 52 buildings at Barcroft, and it's a substantial number of the buildings. It's a smaller proportion of the actual units, because a lot of the buildings we're talking about destroying are smaller. But it is a substantial number of the buildings. And so my view of this was, we need to, Lauren had some pretty good ideas about some of those buildings that were to be demolished, have some pretty defining architectural characteristics, and thought that possibly we could prevail on them to protect some of those buildings. But even if we don't do that, what has to be absolutely done is that conservation area has to be protected in perpetuity with an easement. And can I say that, can I repeat our conversation tonight? Is that okay?
And Lauren can correct me.
Okay, and Cynthia informed me tonight that what was initially going to be a controversial subject, I guess, with the developer over this perpetual easement, apparently now it's going to be a done deal, and it's been worked out. which is pretty important. It doesn't make up for the fact that we're going to lose 20 of the 52 buildings, but it does ensure that the sort of heart of the development will remain. And these are the buildings that Chair Lynch are planning to, that are gradually renovating. And so,
Lauren, did I misspeak or that's still?
No, that's correct. I mean, that is the county attorney has confirmed how we define what the easement is meant to be and how long it's supposed to be. So that's correct.
so I think that's a major accomplishment.
That's a win.
Really, really big win, because what I would have done had we not gotten that is file a petition for historic district designation there, which I didn't really want to have to do. But would have caused a lot of people some heartburn, I'm sure. But so anyway, that's all I have to say about it. And I would ask Lauren to also, speak up and mention whatever I missed.
No, Vicki did a great job. Thank you so much for being at the meeting. Thank you for all your kind words. And it really was just identifying the historic preservation policy for Barcroft, and that, we got this kind of proposal that's going to change what we anticipated back all the way in 2012, 2013 with the form-based code vision. And, just having Dick there and having Joan there to really kind of hold the county and Jared Lynch accountable to those policies, I think is really important. So very much appreciate your time there. But that was kind of our major meeting for this Barcroft apartment land use analysis meeting extravaganza that's happening right now all the way, I think, until June. There was one other meeting. So each of these meetings have a particular subject that's being focused on. And so on March 11th, there was one for transportation and parking. And basically, staff presented about the policy of those, the rationality for changing those policies if necessary, but really focused on, trying to find priorities with pedestrian and bicycle connectivity, maintaining, adequate parking supply, enhancing, local transit service availability, and then just kind of coming up with what is the guiding principle that we're trying to achieve concerning that subject. So my guess then is that the next meeting, which is April 1st, that's going to be, they haven't announced it yet, but I'm pretty sure it's on open spaces, things such as creating mini parks, as well as what are the preservation areas, which is meant to be more about the intact ecosystems that's at Barcroft's. But it's also going to touch upon the proposed amenity center. So Dick, we should have a conversation before that April 1st meeting, just to kind of figure out the type of questions that, you might want to consider. So, but that's pretty much the summary of those two meetings.
Can you show us on that map where that amenity center would actually go?
Sure. So the amenity centers are going to be around. So section 1, the light yellow area, they're proposing the amenity center to be around building 6 and 7. And they are planning on utilizing the building. I think it's building 6. I think they're utilizing that building, but I think that there's some discussions about altering that building. Again, I haven't seen any major detail. There's no designs that we're seeing behind the scenes. It's more of just ideas. So I think it'll be good for us to ask some questions about the intentions that they have for that area, because we see it as a real historic core of Barcroft. And if we're going to start proposing major changes to the existing buildings, well, that's just something we need to kind of provide as much input as we possibly can to influence that and do that as much as we can now.
Yes.
So Lauren, I'm trying to count the buildings.
There's 52. There's 52
Yeah, no,
buildings.
but the ones that are going, It's section 9. It's section 6, about 2/3 of section 6. It's all of section 2 and section 5. Is that right?
That's about right, yeah.
So it's all of those, and just a quick question, in those sections, that's the greater part of 1, 2, 4 whole sections. In those sections, how historic, how interesting, what are we going to lose in those sections? And will there be enough remaining Barcroft that the essence of what it was and what Dick was saying was so historic and interesting about it, will it still be there? Because if not, then it's just a matter of time before other little pieces get eaten up. Although it's nice to know that they're putting in, a perpetual cover on it. But anyway, is there anything in those sections that we're going to lose that we're really regretting?
Well, we're biased, right? We like all of Barcroft. All of Barcroft we see as special, and there's not a drastic change, which is really the great thing about Barcroft. There's not a drastic difference between many of the sections. They all work well together with design, even though it's two different architects. But it's not like there's a section that was built in the 1930s and a section built in the 1950s. I mean, it's from 1941 to 1951 or 1952. So it's really works really well together. But there's some of the sections, it's just, there's going to be some things that will definitely be lost. If you think of building 40, which is in section 6, that's closer to the George Mason and Columbia Pike area. Thank you so much for all of the moving of the mouse. That building is lovely. That building has this wonderful kind of breezeway. It very much reminds me of like a typical kind of campus that we see in our garden apartment complexes. It has a lovely cupola. It has some good brickwork, and the courtyard in front of it is very lovely too. So these are things that will, in fact, I think a lot of people would probably say that might be a very ornate section of Barcroft that you can see very clearly. And so that's something that would be lost, but there can be creative ways to try and keep the spirit of the design, maybe with something existing, but it's still not being the tangible building. So there's creative ways to go about it. But, I know that Cynthia, your heart is in section 5. Section 5 is some really interesting buildings where they kind of look like, right over the long 4 Mile Run. Those buildings they kind of look like they are, a typical garden apartment complex, but they all have individual stoops, I think, to go into the units, which are about 2 bedrooms per unit. They almost kind of are like a townhouse, but they don't look like townhouses. That's something that's different that will go away. So we just have to kind of see if we're getting a balance. I mean, technically we're getting more preservation than losing. And, we're trying to be as creative as possible with understanding that this is an interesting partnership that we have with Jarrah Lynch. And I'm going to continue to work with Dick and Joan to kind of see how strong of a voice the HLRB can have with this analysis, this land analysis portion of this project.
And part of the problem, if you go back to the other slide, this development sort of got baked in when they did the form-based code, left the whole area pretty vulnerable. And, the apartment complex was owned by, I don't know who, but was about to sell it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were about to sell it. It could have been completely developed over, but the county managed to buy it with some money from Amazon and its own money. And Jarrah Lynch is trying to now figure out how to make it viable as 99-year affordable housing. And one of the ways to do it is develop at a higher density. So there are legitimate economic reasons for doing what they want to do.
Yeah.
But like Lauren said, we should be able to save that one building if we tried really hard, because there's no real need to take it down, and it's in the conservation area.
Well, I'll just add that as part of this study, we've learned a lot more about the evolution of Barcroft and the different phases of the different architects, but also looking more closely at the styles, the different details between the buildings and the different phases. So we've had really unlimited access to this complex like we've never had before. When we were developing the form-based code, we didn't have that information. So one of the reasons this land use study is so important is because it's allowing us to look at existing policy and being able to also incorporate new knowledge and new information that we've gleaned since that time. So that's an important aspect of this process.
What's the status of that land use study?
Lauren, do you have a sense of the timing? You said the land use part of it is going to the board in when, in June?
Oh, yes. So there's a couple more meetings set up. I can try and see if I can get to the project page real quick. I've been toggling so much with the HLRB website. But I'm pretty sure the meetings are going into May, and I believe that they're going to the county board with just kind of an update with what all of these guiding principles we hope the county board will take into consideration as Jerry Lynch is giving the green light to expand further with their designs. So I'm pretty sure that's going to be happening in June, but I can bring back that information in it.
Was it published somewhere?
No. We're talking about
the meetings that you've been part of.
The meetings that are happening right now is the public engagement that is leading to county staff to give a bigger update to the county board, which would happen in June. And that's to kind of say, this is what the community's told us. This is the input that we've received. This is the county's analysis. This is the Jerry Lynch analysis, and the county board kind of, we're hoping will let us know, are we on the right track? Or based on community feedback, we need to kind of reconsider certain things.
Is that the land use study?
That's the land use study.
Okay.
That's the land use study, yes.
Quote unquote.
Will there ever be anything in writing?
I don't know. I don't know what the end product will be. Probably a board report.
Have any discussions been held as to who will hold the easement?
The county, the Arlington County would hold the easement.
We will.
Okay, I know we've approved historic facade easements in the past, and we've had third parties easement holders, I recall.
We have in the past, but most recently the county has been the easement holder. So this would not be any different. Like Wakefield Manor, Courthouse Manor, the county's the easement holder.
Okay.
Wakefield Commons, the county would be.
So the county being the easement holder, it's kind of a political question as to what would happen. From now.
I think I know what you mean, Jerry, and that's funny. I've had that question brought up many times by my colleagues, but even though the county is the holder of the easement, yes, if the county maybe 30, 50 years down the road thinks, you know what, us holding these easements isn't something that pushes our mission anymore and they want to get out of it, that would be really difficult to do. We would need to have that altered in the deed. We would have to probably go to court to be able to get that done. And then even that, we have continuously tried to find where easements have been reversed. Like I've tried to search it and I haven't been able to find any record of something like that. And
I have an example for you.
Oh, please share with me.
I can share it with you.
Okay.
Okay, and they did go to court and the judge allowed them to change it.
Okay.
In Virginia or where?
It was in the next to the Lion Village Apartments. The neighborhood was against developing the property, and there was a lawsuit between the developers and the neighborhood, and it was the settlement of the lawsuit put an easement on it, and then the developer, 40 years later came back and said, "Oh, we can't run this property anymore," and they went to court, and I think supported by Arlington County actually, and said, "Oh, this was 40 years ago, a different judge. I'm a new judge. I will, let them do what they want to do with it."
Well, look, nothing is ever permanent. I mean, Congress changes laws all the time, and you just have to get what you can while you can.
Well, I would love to see see that example, Jerry, and I think that that's something, maybe that's something we bring up in the next Historic and Cultural Resources Plan update in 10 or 15 years to come up with a plan on what to do if something like that were to happen, but I'll just pitch that another time.
Thanks, Dick. Thank you for the rundown.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren, as well. Continue on the chair report. Just real quickly, so in March 20, I went to the county budget work session. And the work session, essentially the county's going through more cuts this year, basically. But I went there funding wise really to promote the idea of re-adding funding to the HP staffs to their consultant fund, because the consultant fund has been cut by about 87% in our recent budget cycle. So they've really been like slashed essentially. So I went there to campaign for that. I was also very appreciative to the board for different things. I mean, they were very, very supportive, obviously, of the Historical Resources Plan. They've been very supportive of that, and also Manager Schwartz actually proposed in the budget actually $100,000 to do the HRI, which is great, which is also great. And also commend them for that, because that would really help us, as we get different site plans and different things come through better than more sort of with HRI properties basically. So that'll really help us help HEP do their job, and also help us do our service. So that's a good thing. And then lastly, I also thank them for the Historical Resources Fund. Fund, and that's rolling out, I guess, this spring actually. The 12 grantees are rolling out their actual projects this spring. I think that'll be good for the board to see, for new board members to see as well, and hopefully that'll help sort of spur more funding and more this spur preservation writ large in the county as well. So I have to talk a little bit about that. That's good. I mean, we'll see. Obviously, we have the budget. There are a lot of cuts going on, sort of, not only here but other localities as well. So it's that kind of stuff.
Thank you for speaking on our behalf.
Oh, and just one more thing quickly. So as a public facing board, we're covered in obviously by news organizations out here and there. So if you're interested in sort of like different articles that have been written or being written about our board meetings, I know that you can just kind of set up like a Google Alerts thing, or also I think the HEP staff also may have some links if you're interested as well. So that kind of happens now and again. I've come across a few here and there. Interesting to read, and it's kind of a good way to see how we're covered, I guess. See how we're covered basically. I'll leave it at that. Good.
Maybe some of the better ones could be distributed as part of the. Yeah, that would be nice. Be nice to see.
Lastly, we'll let's use let's keep Katie.
Okay. Yes, we were just we were talking recently about a few issues which we would have to change the bylaws to do so. So we knew this was going to be a long meeting, so got it now. But in relation to that, like if there's any, I know when we were talking about the bylaws last year, people had some questions about them. So if any other items you are interested in looking at in our bylaws, we were thinking that we should review them once a year in a short meeting. If we have a fewer items on the agenda, we'll maybe address those. So if you have anything that staff, and we'll.
And I'll send out the recent copy of the bylaws with those article links so that everybody has a copy of the latest and greatest bylaws.
That's the chair's report on the staff.
Staff.
Yes. So another good news for markers, the Evelyn Syfax marker that you all reviewed last year just got installed. So that one is out in the public. The applicant is hosting a reception this summer to do like an unveiling for her sorority that sponsored it. So they're very excited about it. And I just wanted to bring it full circle for you all that it means a lot for historic markers. So
Where is it again?
that one is out, it's right across the street from the Cyfax Education Center, which is at,
Is that the one by the bakery?
no, yeah, so it is 2110 Washington Boulevard. So it's near Sequoia.
It's that new building at the corner of 50 and Washington Boulevard.
Across from Fort Meyer.
Yeah, across from Fort Meyer to the commissary.
Sorry, what was the address again?
Yeah, 2110 Washington Boulevard. And it's
It's in
situated,
Penrose.
yeah,
It's the corner of Penrose.
Okay. It's situated in such a way that when you're looking at it, you're also looking at the Cyfax Education Center because that was named after.
May have got your first COVID vaccine.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the sites that early COVID vaccines were available.
Yeah, it was the first one.
First one, that's what I thought.
So two last items really quickly. As you all recall, the county board approved our updated historic and cultural resources plan last November. And since then, we've been working on our implementation framework, which is basically our marching orders and our priorities of what we're going to focus on. That very forward-thinking plan. And so we spent the past couple months shopping that through both our department leadership as well as county leadership. And we have been blessed to proceed and start implementing. So we posted the implementation framework on our webpage. So if you're interested in taking a peek at that and seeing what we hope to accomplish, not only on an ongoing basis, but also short, mid, and long-term goals, maybe we can add that link to the email that you'll be getting shortly. So wanted to bring your attention to that. And then lastly, in terms of our staffing updates, so as you know, Michael has been promoted to our associate planner and has been meeting with flying colors. Also means we are still short-staffed because we are now backfilling Michael's previous position as our historic preservation specialist. So we are making progress there as well. We advertised the posting in January. We received over 80 applications.
Oh,
Really great. There was a lot of interest. And so we conducted interviews at the beginning of March. And so we're now in that kind of final process of checking references and trying to get a hiring confirmed. So there will be more news on that hopefully very soon.
how many did you interview out of 80?
Well, HR sent me about 50 and we invited 6 people to interview with us.
Wow, that's a lot of work.
It's just taken a while, like everything else takes a while, but we're really excited. So more to come on that.
Anything else for good of the order? And it's late, so. Hearing nothing, I will adjourn.
Great.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
I barely, I get like.